Hi, good morning. Welcome to the October 27th Planning Board meeting for the City of Miami Beach. Thank you for tuning in. I think we have a few items today, not too many, so that will be good for the board. And glad to see all of my board members with us. So with that, the city staff, you want to go ahead and introduce the meeting virtually?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can take care of that. Good morning, members of the board and members of the public who are attending. Today's virtual meeting of the Planning Board has been scheduled pursuant to Executive Order 20-69 of the Florida Governor, which suspends any Florida statute that requires a quorum to be present in person or requires a local government body to meet at a specific public place and permits local government bodies to use communications media technology such as Zoom. In order to participate in today's meeting, members of the public may dial 1-877-853-5257 and enter the webinar ID, which is 842-6908-7061#. Or they can log in directly to the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which again is 842-6908-7061. Any individual wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon if they're using the Zoom app or dial *9 if they're participating by phone. Individuals who do not have access to a computer and wish to provide testimony or submit evidence in support of or opposition to an item scheduled to be heard may appear in person at the Miami Beach Convention Center at 1901 Convention Center Drive through the Washington Avenue entrance in Art Deco Room 229, at which location access to a computer will be provided. I'll be keeping time at today's meeting. Applicants will have 10 minutes to present, and on public hearing items, members of the public will have 2 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so with that, let's jump right into the meeting. I think let's take the after action items from last meeting, and then let's see, we only have 2 main items. We have some requests for continuance and withdrawals. So with that, do we have a motion from the board to approve the minutes from last meeting?
I'll move it. I'll second.
We have a second. We have a motion moved and second to approve the minutes from last meeting. Michael.
Okay, Mr. Vitia.
Yes.
Mr. Weeder.
Aye.
Mr. Jelpi.
Yes.
Mr. Barano.
Yes.
Mr. Pietro.
Yes.
Mr. Milan. Mr. Milan. Do we have Mark with us?
I don't see him here.
I don't either.
Was he here?
He has his hand raised. He's on the other side.
On the other side.
Can we bring him on this side?
Yeah.
Bring him to the light side, not the dark side.
Hi, Mark. The motion is to approve the minutes from the September 22nd meeting. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I've had computer problems today. I'm on an iPad. I vote yes. I've been the whole time.
Great. Okay. And Mr. Brantley?
Yes.
Okay. The motion passes 7-0.
Okay. And then let's go ahead and move the items for withdrawal and continuance for the respective meetings whenever they'll be continued to.
Sure. So just to note, the first item on the request for continuances or other is Planning Board File Number 20-0344. This is for 1733 to 1759 Purdy Avenue and 1724 to 1752 Bay Road. This project has been continued several times. The board cannot continue it further. And I would just note that this will be re-advertised for the December 14th Planning Board, so the board does not need to take any action on that item. The next item is PB 18-0244, the Telecommunications Ordinance. I'd request a motion to continue this to the December 14th meeting.
So can we have somebody move that?
I'll move it.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Vitia,
Yes.
Mr. Weeder,
Aye.
Mr. Jelpi,
Yes.
Mr. Barano,
Yes.
Mr. Pietro,
Yes.
Mr. Milan,
Yes.
and Mr. Brantley.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. The next item is PB 20-0389, RM2 amendments to properties of 10 acres or more. The request is to continue this item to the November 17th meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do you have a second?
What's the reason for the continuance?
The proposer of the ordinance is working with the neighbors and has asked for the continuance.
I second.
Okay, Mr. Vitia,
Yes.
Mr. Weeder,
Aye.
Mr. Jelpi,
Yes.
Mr. Barano,
Yes.
Mr. Pietro,
Yes.
Mr. Milan,
Yes.
and Mr. Brantley.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. And the next item and last item for continuances is PB 20-0394, post-disaster temporary zoning relief and in-person quorum requirements. We're fine-tuning this ordinance and are requesting that it be continued to the November 17th meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Vitia,
Yes.
Mr. Weeder,
Aye.
Mr. Jelpi,
Yes.
Mr. Barano,
Yes.
Mr. Pietro,
Yes.
Mr. Milan,
Yes.
and Mr. Brantley.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. Hey, Michael, we had asked on the agenda or future agendas to look at discussing the affordable housing. We're not in a position to do that today, but this would have been the kind of agenda that would have permitted that activity to really have a good discussion on. So after this meeting, let's you and I circle and just have a conversation about when we present that.
Sure, and I think most likely the December meeting would be a good one for that, is right now we have a really packed November meeting. So I think we can look forward to that maybe in December.
Okay, perfect. So the two items that we have on the agenda today, one we heard last month, which it just wasn't ready. I think there was some noticing issues on it. So it's back before us. We had a lot of discussion on it, and that was the prohibition against certain motor vehicles on the roadway in Miami Beach. I think we had someone from the police department, if I'm not mistaken, speak on the item.
Mr. Chair, could I interrupt? Somebody's got a lot of background noise in there, and it's interfering with.
I apologize. It may in fact be me. My home is under a massive renovation.
Okay. So you're the troublemaker. I got it. Okay.
Yeah, I just have, all I hear are mechanical tools and equipment chiseling away.
Okay.
Like it's as if it's right next to me. So I apologize.
All right. Well, I'll just deal with it. It sounds like so.
I thought you were in San Francisco by the bridge.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, maybe I need to be there. Maybe nice and quiet compared to where I am, even with all the roadway noise, right? So with that, let me let Michael go ahead and introduce the item.
Sure. So the next item is PB 20-0396, the rental prohibition of certain motor vehicles. This ordinance, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, was discussed at length last month, and due to a noticing issue, is re-advertised for today's meeting today. And I don't know if we have Alexander Boxner from the City Attorney's Office online or not, if you'd like to provide any additional information or update. But otherwise, the ordinance was discussed at length last month. I don't know if the board wants to get an overview again or open up the meeting for a public comment.
Can we get a brief overview?
Sure. Do we have Alex on the line? If not, then I will just give a brief overview.
Michael, I don't see him on. If you'd like, you can give the overview, or if you want, I can too.
If you want to do it, Nick, that's fine with me.
And did the land use board vote? Maybe that's part of your overview. Did they vote, and what was that vote? Land use committee. I'm sorry.
Tom.
This was heard by the land use committee, I believe, in September, and the land use committee recommended approval. It went to it came before planning board actually on that same day. It was the day when we had both meetings scheduled, and due to a noticing issue, we re-advertised it for today's meeting.
And so
land use recommended in favor of it.
Right.
Land use recommended in favor of it. Okay.
So what the ordinance does very briefly is it creates definitions for certain types of vehicles: golf cart, a low-speed vehicle, moped, motorcycle, motorized bicycle, and motorized scooter. And the ordinance prohibits the rental. What it regulates is the rental or lease, not so much movement on public roadways. What it does is it prohibits the rental or lease of golf carts, low-speed vehicles, mopeds, motorcycles, certain motorcycles, motorized bicycles, and motorized scooters. Sorry, it's a tongue twister. Throughout the city. The ordinance prohibits the use in any zoning category, whether as a main, conditional, or accessory use. The one exemption it makes is for the rental or lease of golf carts at golf courses. And then lastly, the ordinance provides that any amendment to this section, which would create a less stringent regulation, in other words, which would water down these regulations, would require an affirmative 5/7 vote of the City Commission.
I have a question. Or are we going to take public comment, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, ask the question.
Okay, great. So I'm generally a supporter of this. I think I understand the intent very, very well. But I have a couple of questions regarding how, I'm thinking of a restaurant in my neighborhood that uses a golf cart for delivery. I'm thinking of a wine store that uses a golf cart for delivery. In some cases, the restaurant will take people home after they eat their meal in the golf cart as just a nice kind of fun additional service. How tightly is it crafted, the wording? When we're talking about somebody that opens up a store and their business is renting out mopeds. I get that. Could it be interpreted more broadly? Because I wouldn't necessarily want it to be.
No, and it's a very good question. It could not be interpreted more broadly than the rental or lease of these vehicles to third parties. So if a business had a golf cart that they use for deliveries or transporting people, I would not characterize that as the rental or lease of the golf cart. So I don't think that this would impact those kinds of operations or trips at all.
Okay, what about a business that provides guided tours of Miami Beach that uses the vehicle? They don't rent the vehicle; they do the tour, and they use I'm thinking of a Segway. They use a Segway as that's how people enjoy the tour, is on a Segway.
Mm-hmm.
Is that prohibited?
Segways are regulated under a different term, and off the top of my head, it's something like personal mobility device, and this would not apply to Segways. The other thing I'd like to say is that this would only apply prospectively. So any businesses that currently operate in the city and rent these types of vehicles would be, assuming that they otherwise comply with the code, would be made legal non-conforming by operation of this ordinance.
Okay, but could a guided tour company do a guided tour with people on mopeds? Could the tour company use the mopeds? And they're not renting the mopeds; they're selling tours, and people are riding the mopeds as a part of a tour.
I think that if somebody's paying for a tour on a moped, I think that would come under the purview of of a moped rental.
I've never seen that, Mike, with tours.
So we're not prohibiting many uses of these vehicles. And would there be an argument, Nick, on constitutionality, equal protection argument on this regulation? I mean, you're talking about a bicycle company that makes money doing this. And when you say it applies prospectively, what does that mean? I mean, does that mean in the future, or does that mean that the existing businesses can remain and do the same thing? Does that mean that new businesses that want to rent bicycles, et cetera, will not be allowed to? Could you perhaps elaborate a little bit on that?
And maybe
when I say it applies prospectively,
let me finish my thought, if I could, please.
Sure.
Sorry, Michael.
No, it's okay. It's a good question. What about? I mean, just to see for sure what we're doing here. The little companies that provide free transportation around the beach, and they sell advertising. They're an advertising based model. You hop on the golf cart, and it's a free ride. But and the advertisers are paying for it. Is that prohibited going forward?
No, this doesn't apply. You're talking about like the freebies.
Yeah,
exactly. This doesn't apply to freebies.
Well, the city operates a freebie. I'm talking specifically about, there's a whole bunch of them, a lot of little operators where I live, and you can just hop on the golf cart and you don't pay because the advertisers are paying. So it's an advertising model. But once again, it seems like maybe it's in a gray area because they're using the golf cart as a business. Golf carts are mentioned in this ordinance. So how is it that we're going to make that distinction?
Yeah, so I think the way I read this and the way I'm hearing it is that the example of the rental of the scooters on a tour would fit in as a prohibited experience. But if you, let's say, typically in a construction site where you have no parking or something like that, and you have to shuttle the workers from this place to that place, that doesn't seem to be covered as a prohibited activity under this ordinance. So I think that's in keeping with the freebies that you're talking about. So it doesn't appear to be prohibited, but it does appear to prohibit a tour where maybe there's a tour leader with several motor scooters behind it that are for rent.
What about what are the other vehicles? The other vehicles, a tour operator that uses golf carts. Could that tour operator couldn't use golf carts?
I think it's about the intent, whether or not it's for rent versus whether it's let's say a service that's being provided. But I don't want to put too many words into it.
No, you're right. You're right,
this
Mr.
area
Chair.
I'm interested in. So,
Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right. This applies to the rental of the vehicle. It's very straightforward.
The rental of the vehicle.
Yes.
Okay, then why is your interpretation that if I'm a tour operator and I put 6 people on mopeds and tour them around, I'm not renting the vehicle, I'm selling the tour?
No, what I'm saying is if you're renting a vehicle as part of, I'm not familiar with how the tour operators work, but
I don't think that service, Tom's right. I don't think that service is out there right now. I'm just trying to think about what might happen. We push it down and it pops up, and
maybe this would clarify. The intent here is to apply to, as though you were to walk into a Hertz and rent a car. The intent here is to apply to the rental or lease of these certain specified vehicles. Mm-hmm. So that's the idea.
Right. Does it say individual rental? Does it say individual rental or corporate rental?
There's no distinction.
Seems to me that it's fairly clear that a business that owns a vehicle under that wording of the statute would be able to continue using that vehicle for its business purposes. It seems like it only applies to tourists who want to come down and rent a bicycle or rent a vehicle to go ahead and do it. My concern is that will the regulation stand up? Because it seems to me it's one that's really ripe for litigation, the idea that that individuals are not going to be able to use these vehicles, almost like Airbnb, or it's like Uber. The same kind of argument could be applied to the rental as being unfair, and I'm not an expert in that area, but I think there's a lot of litigation in that area. Isn't that correct, Nick?
I would tell you that the litigation on Uber and Lyft is kind of a totally different issue. I mean, that was an issue of how the county treated different forms of for hire transportation, and this is not for hire transportation. This is not you paying somebody for a ride in a golf cart or motorized or moped or motorized scooter. This is an individual going to rent a moped, motorized scooter.
Hertz rental. Exactly.
Essentially, you're doing the same thing. You're paying the company who rents the bicycle or whatever for a ride. So it could be argued that it's almost an allied argument.
I mean, I think it's completely different from for hire transportation. You're not paying a third party to drive you. So this is a citywide zoning prohibition on a certain use, and that use is defined as the lease or rental of certain vehicles. This board routinely reviews amendments to the list of permitted, conditional, or prohibited uses. It's no different from any other use regulation that you've reviewed.
I don't know. The distinction is that this is for transportation and you're paying a company. So in a sense, you're hiring them to rent you the vehicle. And the only difference is you don't have somebody driving you. You're renting an Uber vehicle or you're renting a bicycle. The distinction again is whether you're driving it yourself or whether you have a driver. And if the driver himself is the renter, they could argue that wouldn't stand up. But I'm going to see to your distinction.
So David, I see it a little bit differently, and I see it as we're not regulating whether or not somebody can operate a scooter on the streets of Miami Beach or something like that. We're operating the business. I mean, we're regulating the business that conducts the business of renting the vehicles. So no different than how we regulate medical marijuana locations or medicinal uses.
Kareem, I completely understand your view. I'm just saying these are the arguments that could be advanced in the event that it becomes a battle. I think the other side might very easily make the argument that it's the same thing, and there you have a court battle. That's what makes ball games.
Yeah, I understand the problem. I live in South Beach, so I get it. I guess some of the problem has kind of erupted in many parts of the city, but for sure in South Beach. So I get what we're trying to do, and I support it. I just want to understand it and make sure we don't overreach and have unintentional consequences for folks who aren't causing trouble in this area.
Me too, Michael. I'm just, by the way, what is the intent of this litigation? Is it the fact, this ordinance, what is it the fact that the bicycles present a hazard for pedestrians, or that it jams traffic, or they run through red lights, and, like people who are riding regular bicycles of their own, you can't prohibit them from owning a bicycle. So you're prohibiting people from renting a bicycle doing it, but you're not prohibiting people with bicycles, and there are bicycle lanes that are in the city. So couldn't they argue that this is just a similar use and they're being discriminated against, or the ordinance isn't crafted well enough? I'm not sure about that. If you have people riding bicycles in the city, and you banned all bicycles, would that stand up? I don't think so.
Well,
David, I think I think there's a big difference between a motorized vehicle and a bicycle. People that rent bicycles, they're typically going 5 to 8 miles an hour. They're riding on bike lanes. It doesn't present the same level of complication that motorized vehicles, some of which can go in excess of 30 miles an hour, present. And I think that's a big distinction. A bicycle, which is human powered, versus a motorized vehicle. And that's the distinction that's drawn in this legislation.
But you can't ban motorized mopeds. People can ride mopeds in the city, so the same distinction could be made toward motorcycles and mopeds.
Correct, but you can also make a big distinction between somebody renting a motorized vehicle and somebody renting a bicycle. If somebody's renting a motorized vehicle, the likelihood of doing damage, of causing injury is substantially higher with a motorized vehicle than it is with a bicycle. That's just, you can't get around that because a motorized vehicle is inherently faster than a rental bicycle.
Well, you allow the rental of cars.
Again, rental of cars, you're within the confines of a car. A motorized vehicle, oftentimes people don't put a helmet on, and you're riding at speeds in excess of 30 miles an hour. It's significantly more dangerous on a motorized vehicle at that speed than it is in a car.
It is in terms of the degree of danger. But if people are allowed to ride with motorcycles and no helmets and they own the motorcycle, then what's the difference?
They own the bike, they know the bike, and they use it for transportation. Chances are somebody that owns a scooter, they're using it for transportation. Somebody who owns a motorcycle, they're using it for transportation or to ride on the weekend. They know the vehicle. They're not somebody who comes in from out of town, goes out and has a few drinks and says, hey, I'm going to go rent this motor scooter or this motorcycle and then go crazy. Ownership is a lot different than somebody renting a vehicle that they're riding for the first time and they're not using it for transportation purposes.
I think it's a slippery slope. I understand what the intent of the ordinance, but I'm not sure of its validity. But anyway, I'm not going to belabor the argument. I just want to.
I don't want to do that either. But Tom, have there been any specific instances? Is there a specific reason why golf carts are included in the text here? It's hard to imagine somebody misbehaving.
I know that Alec Botsner did some research on this. I'm not sure if this was discussed when you took this up at your September meeting or not, but I know that we've done some research on this, and it's to address a problem that these vehicles are presenting from purely a safety standpoint. It's not to single out an operator. It's not to go after the operation per se. This is more of a public safety issue.
Well, I'm asking specifically about golf carts because I understand the issue around motorized bicycles, mopeds. I get that, but I haven't really seen any crazy, out of control golf carts. So I'm just asking.
I think we have some stats on that. I'd have to let Alec speak to that only because he and some other attorneys in the city attorney's office did the research on that specifically. But there were some safety issues associated with those rental golf carts as well.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then I'm open to being convinced of that, and I'm going to vote yes, favorable recommendation here, regardless. But once again, I'm thinking about overreach and unintended consequences happening. So,
well, that's what I pointed out: are the unintended consequences of the city getting involved in some litigation over this prohibition. I think.
I guess what I would say to that is, there's always a risk of litigation. So I think that if you're deliberating whether to vote it up or down, I would recommend that the board consider, whether to vote it up or down on a policy basis, because I think from our perspective, the ordinance has been drafted in a manner that's legally defensible. We have, at the request of the sponsor, staff and colleagues in my office have identified a policy basis for why these establishments could be prohibited moving forward, and that's laid out in the memo and in the recitals to the ordinance. So I would encourage the board, whether it's up or down, to make a decision based on the policy reasons that have been set forth.
Well, you can always say there's always a risk of litigation. There's some that bear more risk than others, and so that's not entirely persuasive. But I understand your argument concerning policy. I think that's.
Oh, I'm not trying to persuade. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to persuade the board one way or the other. I'm just laying out what's before you.
Yes, but we as policymakers have to understand that whether it's persuasive or not, and whether it's sustainable or whether it's going to cause problems for the city. So I don't know.
Asa, did you have something? I know you wanted to say something. Is it still something you wanted to mention?
Making the distinction that this was not for non-motorized vehicles, but motorized, because he was asking about bicycles. But this, just a quick question. This is, this would shut down existing rental businesses, or this would prevent the addition of any more rental businesses?
Future businesses.
This would prevent new rental businesses. So businesses that are currently operating consistent with the code would be allowed to continue as legal non-conforming uses.
Can we get the jet skis put in this?
Talk to Commissioner Richardson when he's feeling better. He's the author. He's the sponsor here. Yeah.
Valid point on the jet skis. I don't like that idea.
I wouldn't get on one of those things if they paid me.
I used to own one. I like to think I was not crazy on it, but I don't know. So.
Yeah, you're lucky you're alive.
Yeah.
Same
for motorcycles on the water, right?
Yeah, right. Same for people who ride motorcycles.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just old fashioned. I want steel around me if I crash into somebody, not my bones.
All right. Seeing no more unreadiness on the item and no folks from the public wanting to speak on this item, do we have a motion from the floor to move it forward?
I see, Mr. Chair, I see one hand up. I don't know if it's on this item from the public.
I saw Mr. Koppel, but I think it's for the next item. But go ahead. Let's ask him really quickly.
Hello, it is on this item, gentlemen. This is Ken Coppell for SoBeSafe.com. We strongly support this item. We recognize it isn't a total solution, but it's a step towards a solution. It won't stop the current rental operators. It won't resolve the shortcomings with how kill switches are being dealt with now. It won't give our outmanned police department the tools to intercept dangerous operators without endangering public safety. But it's a vital first step on a terrible problem. Anyone who spends time in South Beach realizes this is dangerous. And therefore, if you put the fear of litigation above the safety of the citizens and the reputation of this city, I believe you'd be making a mistake. Thank you.
Mr. Coppell, who do you represent?
SoBeSafe.com. We're approximately 200 residents in the South Beach area.
You're not a vehicle renter.
No, sir. No, sir.
You're talking on behalf of the residents.
Yes, sir. I'm talking on behalf of the residents.
Okay. Thank you.
And I should also mention that we have seen the behavior with golf carts, the point that was brought up before. We believe golf carts are being operated just as badly as the scooters.
Okay. Well, that's good. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Coppell. Okay. I don't think we have anybody else, Nick. And I apologize, Mr. Coppell. I thought you were for the next item. I saw Mr. Sweet there as well.
Jared Mindell, Mr. Chair.
Oh, there's somebody there. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Mindell.
Hi, thanks. Again, it's my first kind of time speaking, but I would think that I'm assuming that the reason that you guys want to limit going forward, granting these licenses or whatever the terminology is to obviously not, over the course of a day, put everybody out of business and kind of have a more gradual solution. And if that's the case, I'm in favor of this because I think that, I'm a lover of Miami Beach. I'm a resident for decades and I want it safe. So what's from stopping somebody from just continuously selling the LLC and continuing to have this grandfathered protection? Or frankly, me saying, I'm a current owner or I'm a new owner and I'm not selling to the points made before by somebody. I'm a tour rental. It's a $5, rental, but you get a free scooter for a day, and it's another $40 for day two, right? Where there's kind of a cup and ball trick going on there. Are we just trying to push it forward in the right direction? I think then we're doing a great job. I'm just hearing it for the first time, and I'm just curious if there's ways for us to kind of beef it up as well, or maybe that's kind of a battle for another day. Because again, I'm just a Miami Beach citizen who loves Miami Beach.
Mr. Mendel, you might consider there's a separate ordinance that has, and Nick, maybe you can expand on this a little bit. A second ordinance, a different ordinance that has already passed on second reading. Am I right? That addresses current operators. Could you tell us about that?
I believe what the question was about how existing legal non-conforming rental businesses could remain in operation. But you're asking me about the separate operational rules on existing businesses?
Yeah, I think Mr. Mendel is probably be comforted to know that there's a second ordinance that is, this ordinance is specifically targeting future operators or future potential operators. There's a second ordinance that goes pretty farther than we ever have as a city to regulate existing operators.
That's right. And that was, I need to check my files to see if that was adopted on second reading, but I know it's pending. And it basically, what it does is it tightens a number of our regulations on existing businesses that rent out these types of motorized vehicles.
I believe what Mr. Mandel was discussing was the proscription against, by some legal technicality, transferring ownership to his ownership to somebody else and thereby getting grandfathered in.
Right.
Well, this ordinance that I'm speaking of addresses number of vehicles per business. It addresses any number of issues or several issues that are helpful in
we don't know
conversation.
We don't know if there are proscriptions against transferring title to the business to somebody else, and then the new business owner continuing to operate under the old license.
Yeah, well, I don't know the specifics of that. If Nick is not familiar, we may not be able to answer it today. But
I can tell you it's very unlikely that a third party is going to purchase a business with hidden liability. Chances are they'll want to purchase the inventory and material, but they'll want a clean LLC with a new EIN so they don't assume any liability. I would suspect that would be even more important here in some type of rental business where there could be hidden liability. So I think it's a valid point, but highly unlikely that a third party is going to purchase the exact business.
But there could be insurance for that eventuality, and it may not deter any future owner if there's an existing insurance policy that can be transferred to the new owner.
There's tax liabilities and other federal liabilities. It's just unlikely. I don't often see that. I see them maybe buying the rights to the name, but it's a clean EIN and it'll trigger a new BTR, which would then this ordinance would take into account.
That's right. That's right.
Call the question.
All right. Do we have any support or non-support for the item?
Yeah, I'm happy to move forward with a favorable recommendation.
Do we have a second on it?
I'll second it. It's Mark.
Okay, Mr. Batia?
Yes.
Mr. Weeder?
Yeah, I'm going to vote yes with the cautionary tale that I have just mentioned, but the policy reasons for it are clear, and I think that it's probably if we can work it, but it is subject to numerous problems, in my humble opinion. Aye.
Okay, Mr. Jelpy,
Yes.
Mr. Barano,
Yes.
Mr. Pietro,
Yes.
Mr. Milan,
Yes.
and Mr. Brantley.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0 for a favorable recommendation to the City Commission.
Yeah, and Nick, just note the ownership conversation that came up as we transmit this back, and perhaps it would be similar to how we do the CUPs or something like that with a transfer of ownership. But anyway, I'll leave it to the folks who know the legal law better than I do to craft that.
We can, Mr. Chair, we can include that comment as far as asking the commission to take a look at transfers of ownership. We can include that as a recommendation of the planning board.
Yeah, I think it was expressed here, so we don't need to take a vote on it, but I think we should.
No, you don't.
That.
That's right. Thank you.
I think we should include, the possibility of increased litigation as a result of the ordinance. There is a higher probability than not. Maybe include that as some kind of guidance. I don't know.
Well, David, if it's okay with you, I'd rather not include that coming from the board. But I think it's almost inherent in any legislation that we pass that would be something to consider.
Okay. Let it go.
All right. Let's jump into the next item, which is 4000 Alton Road, which is also an item that we heard last month, which is by the Talmudic University. And let's just have staff reintroduce the item.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this discussion item for 4000 Alton Road. I'll just go through a history and summary for the discussion for the board to review. So on August 25th, the planning board considered 3 items related to an FDOT parcel abutting 4000 Alton Road. The first was a future land use change from PF, public facility, to RM2 residential multifamily medium intensity. The second was rezoning from GU government use to RM2. And the third were amendments to the land development regulations for the RM2 zone property at 4000 Alton Road. The planning board provided a negative recommendation to the City Commission on all 3 items and expressed concern with the increased intensity on what would become a larger site, as well as significant concerns with a 140-foot height proposed at that time. Now, on October 14th, this month, the City Commission reviewed and approved the ordinances on first reading with no increase in height from the current maximum of 85 feet. The City Commission also referred the ordinances back to the Planning Board for an advisory recommendation now that the height was no longer an issue. The rezoning of the GU parcel to RM2 could result in an increase of 41 residential units based upon the maximum density permitted, which is 100 units per acre. As it pertains to the land development regulations, modifications to the setbacks and line requirements are proposed as part of that ordinance. Now, in most zoning districts, the required setbacks are a factor of the lot width, depth, and the height of any proposed construction. Where the maximum height is over 50 feet, additional setbacks are required for the tower portion of a building, which is that portion of a building over 50 feet in height. Thus, as the site gets wider and deeper, the required setbacks increase. As the width of this property on Alton Road is approximately 460 feet, one of the largest RM2 parcels in the city, the required side setback for the pedestal is nearly 37 feet or 8% of the lot width, and the required tower setback is about 40.5 feet based upon a building height of 85 feet. The proposed ordinance would reduce the required side setback to 10 feet for the pedestal and 15 feet for the tower. The depth of the property is approximately 340 feet, resulting in a required rear pedestal setback of 34 feet, which is 10% of the lot depth, and a tower setback of 51 feet, or 15% of the lot depth. The proposed ordinance would reduce the required rear setback to 10 feet for the pedestal and 15 feet for the tower. The ordinance would also allow balconies and decorative features to encroach into the setbacks up to 50% versus the 25% that is typically allowed by the city code. It also would eliminate the liner requirement for parking garages along the rear and sides of the building. Now, in 2014, variances were approved to effectively push the building towards the rear and south of the property lines in order to provide more space between the building proposed at that time and the town of Utica University. The setbacks proposed now are largely consistent with the variances granted by the Board of Adjustment back in 2014. Now, the board did have a lengthy discussion on this item in August, and the City Commission also had a lengthy discussion. So I will leave it up to the board if you would like to open up the discussion as well to the public or not.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just add to what Michael was saying, the primary reason that the commission referred this back to you guys for another advisory review is because the rezoning and the flume ordinances did not change from when you previously reviewed them and transmitted them in August. Those have remained identical. However, the LDR ordinance has changed fairly significantly in that it no longer contains a proposed increase in building height, and the development regulation modifications are limited essentially to setbacks and to the removal of the liner requirement. Based upon the significant change to the LDR amendment, even though it was being reduced, because it was so different than the one that you had reviewed, the commission wanted to get your opinion on those changes. And they also wanted to get your opinion on the other two items within the context of those modified LDR regulations. So this is not a new transmittal hearing. You've already performed your duties under the code by transmitting the legislation, and the commission has acted upon the ordinance at first reading. But before they consider the ordinance at second reading, it's currently scheduled to be considered for second reading on November 17th. November 18th. They did want to get your feedback due to the changes to the LDRs, and they're seeking your feedback on all three ordinances.
So Tom, with that, is it my understanding that there is no need to take a vote on the items? It's just more maybe a series of agreed recommendations. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, they're looking for your recommendations. And so I think that you could, if there's disagreement on the board, if there's not consensus on the board on different recommendations, you could certainly, I think, take votes on recommendations, but you will not be formally voting on the ordinance in terms of a transmittal.
Okay, and then the second thing that just comes to mind, I remember on this item, there was a lot of confusion or maybe at least in my head, there was uncertainty as to how rezoning of adjacent, current GU property that was owned by DOT, GU's own property that's owned by the DOT would transfer in terms of what the new zoning would be in the process. And I don't think that we were very clear on it. Could you just articulate the actual process again for me?
Sure. That's actually set forth within the LDRs and under the GU section of the code. And let me pull it up and I'll read it to you. Because what happens is whenever there is a sale of government land to a private entity, the city commission is charged with rezoning it to a district that is compatible with the comprehensive plan. And let's see, Nick, do you recall exactly what subsection that was?
It's 142.
Here it is.
I believe
425 per NB. Right. And it says the following. I'll read this. This is section 142-425 per NB. Upon the sale of GU property, the zoning district classification shall be determined after public hearing with notice pursuant to Florida statutes by the city commission in a manner consistent with the comprehensive plan. So basically what that means is that the city commission will need to determine what the appropriate zoning district should be because it's no longer a government-owned property.
So it shall be rezoned. It is commanded that it be rezoned. Is that what
shall be determined?
shall be determined. It can't remain GU. It has to change to something based on Florida statute.
Yes. Well, the public hearing notice pursuant to Florida statute. So based upon this, since it's no longer a government-owned property, the new property owner, assuming they close on the property, this would all be this rezoning, if it's adopted at second reading, would be subject to the private entity closing on the property. They would need to have it rezoned to a non-GU designation. Now, the reason that RM2 was proposed is because the immediately abutting parcels are zoned RM2. Technically, under the code, if the commission wanted to consider a lesser designation, a less intense designation, they could do that, say RM1 or townhome or CD1. As long as the maximum FAR within that district is less than 2.0, then they could potentially do that. If they wanted to reclassify it to a zoning designation that had a higher intensity, then voter approval would be required. But since they're going to propose a zoning district that is residential, the corresponding comprehensive plan amendment is needed. So, Kareem, I think that answers your question, or is there any more clarification?
No, it does. And do we have any other questions from the board? Because don't we have do we have any presentations on this issue first before? Let me make sure I understand how we're going to set this up. Yeah. Are there any presentations today, Nick?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so just a quick question for Tom. Tom, you are recommending RM2, is that right?
Yes, we're recommending RM2.
And did you consider a lesser zoning category? Did you consider it, and why did you settle on RM2 if that's the case?
We had looked at what would happen if you were to reclassify it or rezone it to a lesser district. So, for instance, let's say you rezoned it to RM1 just for discussion purposes. The issue there is that if you rezone it to RM1, it makes it very difficult to create a unified development site, because with a different zoning district, the FAR can't move around and your setbacks have to be as if the property was separate. So even though they may combine them with the unity of title, for zoning purposes, you'd have two different projects. And that presents a host of issues with regard to access, as well as siting the building and moving FAR around. If it was to be rezoned to a different district and Mass never went forward with the purchase of the property and Talmudic University didn't purchase the property would basically become unusable, because it's completely impossible to develop that parcel as a standalone site simply because you cannot access it except for from either the Talmudic property or from the Mass property. There's just simply no way to get access, ingress, and egress given the location of that site.
Okay, thank you.
John, just to clarify, if we not that I'm recommending it, but if we did zone it to an RM1, wouldn't we be able to do an overlay with specific setbacks so that we could put 0 setbacks? And would that still prohibit them from coming together under one land use board application?
You could do an overlay for purposes of setbacks. However, they would not be able to move the FAR around.
That would be the main reason why you want to consider RM1 would be to, restrict how you use that FAR. But I don't think, from a planning perspective, I think we should be careful of how we use the LDRs to prohibit development and rather focus on the LDRs to define what's the best type of development you should have.
Any other questions from board members?
Okay, so we're going to listen to the presentation, and then we are going to hear from the public, right, Mr. Chair?
That's correct. So let's go right into the presentation. PJ, if you can cue it up and introduce, or I don't know who's speaking.
Mr. Chairman, I am. This is Michael Lark.
Hey, Michael, good morning.
How are you? Could I ask you a couple of things? I think you just asked PJ to pull up the presentation. That was my first request. And then secondly, would you please promote Camilo Miguel? our client, and then Ray Fort. Camilo wants to offer some remarks at the beginning of the presentation.
Absolutely. PJ, can we do that for both Ray and the owner, Camilo?
And Michael Larkin, to the extent that any of these proceedings are incorporated in the record before the City Commission, it might be a good idea for me to swear in witnesses.
As you wish.
Do you have any objection to that, Michael?
I don't.
Okay. So this may be a good time for me to ask then any members of your team to state whether they swear under oath that any and all testimony that they'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is Camilo Miguel. Look, first and foremost, I hope everyone is weathering these unprecedented times well. As you may be aware, this has been a long road for us, and in listening to the public and the community, we have decided to abandon the request for any hype relief. I want to thank the planning staff and certainly the planning board for all the time they've dedicated to this. And we are very proud to say that we have come to some common ground with the planning staff and now have a favorable recommendation on all items in front of you today for approval, as well as the fact that we had a first reading approval by the commission as well, which has been referred back to you for discussion. I'd like to let Michael Larkin lead this discussion and walk you through the items in front of you and answer any of the questions that you may have. And once again, thank you to everyone, and I hope you're all doing well.
Okay, thank you, Camilo. So, Mr. Chairman, board members, Michael Larkin, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard, here representing the applicant, Camilo Miguel, principal of MASS. With me today is Ray Fort, our architect, Cesar Garcia Pons, our urban planner, Adrian Dabowski, our traffic engineer, Andy Dolkart, our economist, Julio Collier, our civil engineer. Also with me today is Peter Waldman. He's the attorney that's been helping us with the acquisition of the FDOT parcel. Camilo Miguel and Christina Cuervo from Mass Capital. And last but not least, my partner, Jeffrey Burkow, and my colleague, Greg Fontella. All the expert witnesses that I just listed for you are available for your questions, and they'll be here throughout the duration of the presentation. So PJ, could you pull up the PowerPoint presentation? Thank you. You can go ahead to the next slide. So here are the scope of our request. And I think it's important to start with the land use designation because the rezoning is connected to the redesignation. So with regard to the first request, once the parcel is sold to us by FDOT, it can no longer be public facilities because it's no longer owned by a governmental entity. And that begs the question, what is the appropriate land use designation? Well, the appropriate designation, as our experts and city staff have told you all, is RM2. That is the land use designation of surrounding properties. When you get to the second request, again, once sold to us by FDOT, your code takes over and controls the rezoning process, just as Tom and Nick has described to you all. Section 142-425 clearly states, upon the sale of GU property, the zoning district classification shall be determined by the City Commission in a manner, and this is very important, consistent with the comprehensive plan. So it must be consistent with the RM2 land use designation. And the only zoning district that is consistent with the RM2 land use designation is the RM2 zoning district, which happens to be the zoning of the immediately adjacent property. To do less, I will say, could open up the city to a reverse spot zoning claim if you would rezone it RM1, because that's simply not the zoning of the surrounding properties. The last request are the text amendments. First is a reduction of setbacks consistent with prior variances granted by the Board of Adjustment back in 2014. The second request is removal of the liner requirement for our interior side yard adjacent to State Road 907 and our rear yard adjacent to the Julia Tuttle Causeway. The next slide, please. Here again, I wanted to accentuate the point to you all that these changes that we are asking for only apply to our RM2 zoning district. They don't stretch across the street to RS4, to the RM1, or the CD3. And it's also important to take this opportunity to say we do have a neighbor within our property, Talmudic University. They are not a part of our application. We are not taking any development rights from the Talmudic University parcel. They are our neighbor, within a unified development site. And Rabbi Zweig has been intimately involved here, making sure that our redevelopment will be compatible with his university, but they are in no way a part of our development project. Next slide, please. There is ample precedent for the rezoning and redesignation we have requested to RM2. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll see in 2014, we asked this board and the City Commission for another FDOT surplus parcel. If you look on the right-hand side of this slide, you'll see that that parcel is denoted by the black and white checkered boundary. So back in 2014, for that surplus property, we asked you all to change the land use designation. Back then it was recreational open space to RM2. You all recommended in favor of that. And we asked you all to change the zoning from GU to RM2. You all recommended in favor of that. City Commission accepted your recommendations back in 2014 and redesignated and rezoned the property to RM2. Flash forward 6 years later, 2020, we are asking the identical request. The only thing different here is that the land use designation has changed throughout the years from ROS to PF, but our request remains identical to where it was back in 2014. Next slide, please. Here you'll see a picture of the setbacks as we are proposing and exactly where the FDOT parcel is. The FDOT parcel is denoted in green in the northwest corner of our property. And it's important that you all understand the process that has already occurred with regard to this FDOT parcel. First, it was declared surplus by FDOT. That initiated an appraisal process. The appraisal process culminated in a purchase price. Based upon agreement for the purchase price, FDOT issued a letter on August 27th stating that they had agreed to sell the surplus property to MATS. This culminated in a purchase contract that has now been signed by both parties, by Camilo Miguel and by the district secretary. There has been talk about why didn't the city use it. I think the city manager did a very good job at the city commission hearing explaining why. He did it in writing. He did it to the commissioners, saying that it was the character of the parcel is too small, it's landlocked, it's inaccessible, it cannot be accessed through the FDOT right of way because it's restricted, whether you're talking about the Julia Tuttle Causeway or State Road 907. It can't be a disaster debris management site. It's too small, and there are environmental concerns about placing a dump right next to Talmudic University. So with regard to the setback lines, if you look closely at this slide, you'll see the purple lines. The purple lines represent the existing RM2 setbacks. If you look again at the blue lines, that represents our proposed setback. We're proposing 10 feet for the pedestal and 15 feet for the tower. There's 3 important points to look at. First, we are not altering the front setback adjacent to Alton Road whatsoever. Our building will come no closer than 50 feet to Alton Road, and that is current setback requirements. Secondly, if you look closely again, there is a landscape buffer that's adjacent to State Road 907 and the Julia Tuttle Causeway. So not only do you take into account the setback we are offering within our property, but then you add to it this additional green belt. On State Road 907 at its widest point is just over 43 feet. With regard to the Julia Tuttle Causeway, the green belt at its widest point is 66 feet. This is not usual. Often when you all are asked to adjust setbacks downwardly, it leads to a situation where the buildings are closer to neighboring properties. Here, we have no residential neighbors, and we have an additional green belt that is between our property line and the edge of pavement. And most importantly, these reduced setbacks give breathing space to Talmudic University. It is not simply an empty shell of a building where people come, they take their lessons during the day, and then they leave at night. No, families live there, the families of the students, the families of the professors, they live within Talmudic University. So it's vitally important that we give them the respect and the breathing space that reduced setbacks would allow. I'm going to turn it over to Ray Fort now, Mr. Chairman and board members. He's going to walk you all through the massing studies.
Okay, great. This is Ray Fort with Architectonica. So I think we can start by going to the next slide.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, this is just a summary. Again, I've told you about number 1. Number 2 is we're not altering the liner requirement. along Alton. We are asking for its removal along the side, which is State Road 907, and the rear for the Julia Tuttle. And importantly, the regulation shall be limited to properties that are over 60,000 square feet in size as of the effective date of this ordinance, which restricted to our property. So it does not apply to Talmudic University property because they're not over 60,000 square feet on the effective date of this ordinance, which will be in the latter part of November. I'm sorry, Ray, to interrupt. Keep on going.
No worries. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. So this is a massing study that shows what could be built within the current setbacks today under the existing zoning. And what you'll see is that in order to fit the permissible buildable area, we end up with a courtyard building that essentially maximizes its use of its frontage, but it also forces this very tight courtyard that's pushed up against the Talmudic. I'll also point out that it creates a somewhat wall-like condition along Alton Road because we're confined to this smaller area in order to fit this building footprint. To be clear about some of the conditions and the way this is put together, there's a ground floor lobby, one level of parking above that. I'm sorry?
Oh, 10 minutes are up. Are you? Oh, how much of this?
It's just two more. It's three more slides. It'll be quick.
Mr. Chair, how much time would you like me to?
Let's give him 5 more minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And then above that, we have the typical floors up to 85 feet, which is in the darker gray color. So then when we go to the next slide, you'll see that once we give some setback relief, we're actually able to create a significant amount of green space around the project, a significant distance from the Talmudic building, and still be significantly set back from State Road 907 and the Julia Tuttle Causeway. As Michael pointed out earlier, we're 66 feet setback from the Julia Tuttle Causeway just from the buffer alone, and we'd be adding a 10-foot setback for the podium and a 15-foot setback above that from that side. And then from State Road 907, we already have about a 44-foot setback just because of the buffer. And again, we'd be adding a 10-foot setback, so 54 feet, and then another 5 feet on top of that. So then close to 60 feet of setback from those two roads, which is a significant amount of distance. I'll also point out that when we push it to this corner, we're actually pushing it to a side where it's really not getting closer to any residential area whatsoever. It's just getting closer essentially to Biscayne Bay and sort of the network of roads that occurs between here and there. And lastly, I'll say that the building is at the 50-foot setback line from Alton Road on the short side of the building. That is the narrow side. So really, when you think about it, the back of the building is more than 200 feet setback from Alton Road in that triangular space that is set between the Talmudic and the proposed, the potential design massing. So just if you wouldn't mind quickly toggling between the previous slide and this slide, just to understand the differences, that'd be great. Perfect. Exactly. So you can see what a difference it makes just to give that setback relief. If we go to the next slide, we can see a massing study of this version. And while we did provide a 10 and 15-foot setback away from the Talmudic so that we can provide glazing on that side and try to give it some breathing room, in the massing format, it still appears to be extremely congested and tight up against the existing building. While there seems to be a more than ample amount of space between State Road and Julia Tuttle Causeway and where the building line starts. So when we go to the next slide, we can see that once we adjust the setbacks, we still have that green buffer. We have the short side facing Alton Road, and there's plenty of green space around the property, and there is now breathing room between all the buildings. So if you wouldn't mind toggling between these two slides. Perfect. And I'll end on the next slide, which is a comparison of the two plans side by side, just so you can look at them next to one another. And I'm glad to answer any questions you have, but I think that's the end of our presentation.
It is. Thank you very much, Ray. And again, Mr. Chairman and board members, All of us are available for your questions. We have numerous expert witnesses here that can answer any question you all would like. Thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, guys. So, Michael, you and your team just stand by. We're going to have the public just have some opportunity to speak on this item, whether they're in favor, support, or otherwise, and then there'll be some time for you guys to speak after that. So let's go to the first person from the public who's awaiting us to speak, and I believe that would be is it Mr. Villamar or is it Gina Russ, PJ? Okay, so it'll be Gina Russ. Ms. Russ, do we have you?
We do, thank you. My name is Gina Russ.
Gina, can I just swear you in before you testify?
Of course.
Do you swear under oath that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
My name is Gina Russ. I'm a resident of Miami Beach, and I wanted to speak to all three ordinances, but both basically focus on the first two. As mentioned, we are asking that you stand by your 6-0 vote against all three ordinances. As mentioned, this commission asked whether all three votes were based on the height of the building. And as you know, ordinance 1 and 2 have nothing to do with the height of the building. They have to do with the FDOT parcel, which is 35,360 additional square feet and up to 41 units on this large building. And as mentioned in the memo to the commission, the planning board members expressed concern with the increase in density and intensity on the larger site. And that's what you discussed last time around. If this site is not purchased by the developer, it's going to remain green space, which would not be a terrible thing. But it also, as you know, can be classified different than RM2 and not add all the square footage to an already challenging site and very important space on Miami Beach. So we ask that you stand by your vote 6-0 against all three ordinances. Also, the commission asked 3 questions to be answered by the board. 1, traffic study. They asked either for a City of Miami Beach traffic study or for a traffic study or we suggest a city transportation engineer do a critical review of the developer's traffic study. That's all we have right now is the developer's traffic study, and look at the study and the conclusions and see if they agree. Again, this is a challenging site. Second, they asked for a visual impact going north on Alton Road and east and west on the Julia Tuttle. And that was specifically asked for. And that affects everybody in the Mid-Beach and visitors coming back and forth from South Beach. And last, density. What impact will 35,360 square feet and 41 units have on this building and this site? And those are 3 things they specifically asked you to look at. I would like to respond very quickly. It was mentioned that Talmudic is not part of the development, but as you know, this is a unified development site to develop 2 parcels, Talmudic and Mass Capital's 4000 Alton. Second, we know that Talmudic University signed a design review board application. And third, from the Mass's own website, it says that they acquired extra FAR from Talmudic University. There may be lots of other connections. I don't know, but I know those 3. So I believe that the residents and St. Patrick's have less of a conflict of interest than Talmudic University and should be heard on their feelings and their opinions about this site and how it will impact their area right there and increase traffic and increase density. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Let's go to Mr. Villamar. I'm sorry, my screen is changing. I guess it's Mr. Zui, Rabbi Zui.
Okay, do you swear or affirm under oath that any and all testimony that you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Yitzchak Zweig. I am president of Talmudic University, but I'm here today as a private citizen, Miami Beach. I've been living here 45 years. You know, one of the things that I've been concerned with for many, many years is the 41st Street corridor being just, falling down lower and lower. I see businesses going out of business. And I happen to live at 20th and North Bay, and I see what development has done for that entire area down there called Sunset Harbor. And I think we need a nice project to reinvigorate and activate 41st Street. I really think this development is the best that can be done on this property, especially the way that they have it now, because they're pushing the green space forward. If they build what they can build with the current setbacks, it's going to be very bad for the school. And I have a residence there myself, and it'll block just my view. And I think for the city of Miami Beach, they have the rights to build the 85 feet, and they have most of that FAR is already there to build units. It's not a whole lot more units that they're adding. And I think overall, it's a great project for 41st Street and for Mid-Beach.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Rabbi Zweig, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Rabbi, if you're still with us, oh no, you turned it off. But I was just curious if he could speak to this last question about any relationship between himself, the university, and the applicant. If he would like to share anything or confirm or deny or whatever.
Go ahead, Rabbi. PJ, we can open him up.
Mr. Chairman, can I offer a couple of comments on that?
Sure, but let's go ahead since we're waiting on him to open. Go ahead, Mike.
So this has been a remarkable alternative set of facts that UNA has promoted not only at City Commission, but now at this hearing. And I've been very clear that we are not taking any development rights from the Talmudic University. I said it at City Commission, and I've said it again today. Rabbi Zweig had to sign the DRB application because he's one of the owners of the Unified Development Site, but this bears no relationship to a reallocation of floor area. When you keep on repeating the same alternative set of facts when you know what the truth is, there's no other conclusion in my mind than you're simply trying to attack the character of Rabbi Zweig. Because the way the storyline works is that we are buying development rights from Rabbi Zweig, which implicitly is saying that we're paying him for his support, which is simply not true. He's here in support of our application as a neighbor. We are not buying his support. We are not using any of the development rights from Talmudic University. And I don't know if Rabbi Zweig wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would like to add. Can I speak?
Yes.
Yes, so I would definitely like to add to that, Michael. I appreciate it. It's absolutely true. We did not have any part of this. We're not involved with this. My main concern is over here is that I happen to have known the developer for many years now, and he's always worked with the school to make sure that whatever he builds there will be compatible with the school. If once again he gets frustrated by this many years that he's trying to get this done and he sells the site to somebody else, I have no idea who that new developer will be or if he'll be working with the school. And he's always been very, very interested in making sure that whatever he builds is compatible with us, and that is why he has my support. And I think it's a great project for Mid-Beach.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you also, Michael.
You're welcome.
Okay, let me see who else we have standing by. All right, PJ, my screen is saying Mr. Villamar. Is that correct? My screen changes, so I guess we'll go to Mr. Parker.
Okay, Mr. Parker, do you swear under oath or affirm that any testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning, board, and thank you for the time. I'd like to commend Mass Capital on adapting to the voices of the residents of the city of Miami Beach. As someone who has lived in close proximity to this site for many years, although I don't live there today, my children do, I think it's important that we understand that the 41st Street Causeway, as has been referenced by the rabbi, has genuinely been blighted. The retail, the restaurants, the overall experience that we have as Miami Beach residents entering into the city through this very important gateway is compromised. And it's compromised because, like the rabbi has said, and like we have seen in so many other markets throughout South Florida, the city has not allowed for this area to evolve. And what Mass Capital has done here, in the face of all of the comments and recommendations of the residents in the city, is identify a strategy to take advantage of this very important site while being respectful of the setbacks and their significance, the landscape buffer, which I think is accretive to the protection of the experience that we all care about so much. We have seen so many South Florida cities take advantage of the very special opportunity we're realizing now in this domestic market. And it is time for this 41st Street corridor to be activated in the same way. I think this development will be a tremendous enhancement. I do not believe that the potential for an additional number of units will be of any material impact to the traffic or any other variables. I think the additional green space provides tremendous value to the community and to the experience, and I highly recommend this project, and I hope that the city will approve it. Thank you very much.
I have a question for Mr. Parker. Tell me why, I used to live in the 41st Street area. Tell me why this will reactivate, in your opinion. What specific reasons will it contribute to the reactivation of 41st Street, which is basically now banks and medical offices?
I think it's a great question, and if I'm permitted to answer, I believe that the quality of the luxury residential product in that market has been defunct. There has not been a new tower along that corridor for many, many years. And while the single-family home redevelopment in the Miami Beach market has been quite rapid, it has not yet reached this particular corridor of Miami Beach. So when people are renovating homes in the Sunset Harbor area, the Venetian Island area, the Sunset Islands area, it is directly and positively impacting the Sunset Harbor corridor. We saw the same evolution in the South of Fifth market with all the new buildings coming into play. And then following those buildings came an advancement and improvement of the retail. And I think the same thing will happen here as new buildings are built along the oceanfront corridor. And now for the first time in many, many years, along the Alton Road corridor, we're going to add units, increase the number of younger people that are looking to be in this neighborhood, more affluent people looking to be in this neighborhood. And I think it will allow for the retail and related sort of corridor-based restaurants and businesses to be able to expand their existing market.
So you think that, just want to know, I mean, you believe that this project will increase the number and sale of luxury residential homes?
I'm not sure if it will increase the number of luxury residential homes, but I think it will enhance the overall appeal of this neighborhood, which hasn't seen a tremendous amount of evolution over the last 20 or so years. Very few of the homes in this particular immediate region have been renovated and redeveloped. And I think there's an opportunity to bring a new product into the market, which will create a different level of appeal to a different profile of buyers, which will be accretive to the redevelopment of the 41st Street corridor.
But it's always been my understanding that that area has very nice homes, and a lot of the residents are opposed to the project because they don't want the residential neighborhood disturbed by a new, apartment complex.
I mean, I think a short drive around the neighborhood would be indicative of the fact that many of the homes have yet to be renovated. Many of the homes are not in the condition that we would see in some of the other areas of Miami Beach that have realized the type of redevelopment that they've enjoyed. We've seen it even in markets like the Faena district, where all of a sudden there's a reactivation of retail. We've seen it in Sunset Harbor. We've seen it in South of Fifth. And if you look even at some of the other markets in South Florida that I've been fortunate enough to be involved with, you can look very clearly at the Coconut Grove market, an area that has seen a tremendous amount of vertical development. And as a result, all of the retail elements have grown exponentially, are being redeveloped in a new level of traffic, a new level of engagement and activation is being realized. Right now, if you look at the 41st Street corridor, you're hard pressed to find out who your clientele is going to be. This adds another layer of value in that regard.
Well, there is North Beach Elementary there, and there's Nautilus Junior High within a few blocks. Do you think that the renovation of these new homes, since it's not a historically protected district, might cause increased demolition of older properties? And is that your definition of renovation?
Well, I think renovation can take many different shapes and forms. We've seen some homes that would apply for demolition and new construction, and others that would simply invest in their existing structure and put in new windows, new doors, new roofs, new landscaping, and upgrade the quality of the overall product. I think that this small part of Miami Beach has yet to fully realize its opportunity in that regard. And I think it takes a leader to showcase what this area could be like. Looking back just a few years, and I think the rabbi pointed out the Sunset Harbor District, that was tow truck companies, vacant lots, utilities, and it only recently was it redeveloped. And I think that has allowed for many parts of the Venetian Islands and Sunset Harbor and the surrounding vicinities to enjoy the proximity that is to those residential neighborhoods. And I think the same thing will happen once it starts to reactivate the 41st Street corridor.
Yes,
we've seen it in market after market.
Well, my only thing is that the concern is that the Sunset Harbor area is now, very well developed, and a lot of nice things have happened down there too. But it is more of a business centric area rather than simply a residential area like the area around Tuttle, the Tuttle Causeway, where there are many single family homes up and down Alton Road, which are not necessarily new structures, but some of them have a charm that we may lose by the advancement of this project. So I don't, and I'm not saying that it isn't a good thing, but I'm not sure whether the benefits outweigh the deficits. That's my concern. I mean, there is a certain distinctive character to that neighborhood. The hospital, the schools, the 41st Street, of course, is a main drag and a main entrance way to the city. But if you go up and down 41st Street, you see there's a few restaurants, there's some banks, there's some medical offices, but it isn't Lincoln Road, and I'm not sure it's intended to remain as Lincoln Road. It's an accessible area for the residences on, Prairie Avenue, Royal Palm Avenue, Alton Road, all those areas are small single-family homes with a desire to send, and it's young people that want to send their kids to schools and live there because of the proximity to the schools. So David, I'm not entirely convinced that the area calls for a new development such as
David. If I can you hear me, David? Well, not to interrupt you, but I think I count 15 hands raised, and we're going to have the opportunity to discuss at the end of it.
Okay.
I
was just asking, getting informational rather than. I'm sorry I made a speech, but I was just getting informational.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. Let's continue with Ms. Malley. I believe is the next person from the public wanting to speak.
Okay, Ms. Malley. Do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I affirm.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Malley. I'm a resident of 4000 Alton Road. I just wanted to say that I support the approval of the project. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Malley. And I think we have, is Adrian Gonzalez is part of the team, or he's a commenter?
Commenter.
Okay, go ahead, Adrian.
Adrian, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Hi, good morning, board, and good morning, everyone else that's on this Zoom call. I am a resident over at Lakeview, of 5000 Lakeview, and a former owner of a restaurant on Miami Beach, David's Cafe, resident of the beach for 42 plus years. I've known the developer for a very long time, and everything he pretty much does has been first class. In my personal opinion, growing up on Miami Beach, attending St. Patrick's Church, having my boys over at North Beach Elementary, the entrance to Miami Beach is really not a representation of what Miami Beach is all about and what a dynamic city we are. This project is a first-class project, and with the new modifications, I guess you want to say, that they've made to appease everybody in our community, I think everybody on this board should support this project. It's in a major necessity to the entrance gateway, a major gateway for Miami Beach. And I think this will also cause a snowball effect of the rest of Miami Beach and 41st Street corridor with the new GeoBond project and so forth to be really developed and also be a world-class entrance to our city that we all appreciate and enjoy. So I hope that the board will support this project moving forward. I know it's been ongoing for a very long time, and they have done everything and anything to appease the Miami Beach residents. And again, first-class developer, and I'm hoping that everybody will support this project.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Arkin.
Good morning, everybody.
Hi, good morning. Do you swear under oath to affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, all truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Hey, everybody. My name is Robert Arkin. I'm a 59-year resident. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Robert Arkin. I'm a 59-year resident of Miami Beach. My family's been here for over 90 years. I've been 33 years, about less than 100 yards from the site location. And I'm in the development industry, the construction industry. I've been that for the last 40-something years. And some of the information that some of the presenters have said are really not true to form. And they haven't really shown you what the actual massing is of the project. They haven't shown you where you would be standing or driving and show you how the building would be presented in that manner. They're showing you a top-down view of the actual project, which does not justify them moving the building closer to the street, because then it becomes more of a mass on the street, and you're driving down Collins Avenue on Alton Road. This is predominantly a residential neighborhood. Although this site here is a commercial site, it's a RM2 site. You can build a certain number of units there. It does not lend itself to the neighborhood development that they are proposing. What Jay Parker said is an apples to oranges comparison. We're in a residential neighborhood. We're not in a commercial neighborhood having multi-level, multi-story buildings, high rises that require these higher densities and supporting facilities around them. We're in a small neighborhood. This is what this neighborhood is. It is not a commercial neighborhood, even though it is the entrance to Miami Beach. It is a residential neighborhood and not a high-rise neighborhood or a mid-rise neighborhood for that. Creating more density is going to create more traffic. Doesn't mean it's going to create more traffic to the stores, because we have plenty of houses here to go ahead and support our 41st Street neighbors, but the rents are very high. People can't afford to be in those places, so they can't go ahead and
Mr. Chair, 2 minutes are up.
Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead and wrap your thought, Mr. Arkin. Okay, I think we lost him there. So let's go ahead to, I think Shlomi is next.
Okay, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, all truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, I affirm.
Thank you, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, so I'm a resident over here at 4000 Alton Road, which would be neighboring Mass Capital. And I just want to say that I am for their proposed plans. I would very much know that from hearing the conversations back and forth just between Mass, and they've always been caring for the residents and so on and so forth. And I do believe that the revitalization of 41st Street is basically contingent on this development, and looking forward very much to seeing what new opportunities this could bring, and very excited for it. That's it.
All right, let's go to Mr. Mandel.
Thanks. First time doing this, but I guess I'm kind of passionate, so I wanted to speak on both of them. So
Hi, I'm
a family man.
Do you swear under oath that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm a family man living here over a decade, wife, 3 boys, 1 on the way. I don't know what a lot of these, the FDR and some of the technical terms thrown around, but I think simply put, Miami Beach needs more business. They need more activity. Like, I don't want us to become, Mid-Beach specifically, a victim of this atrophy. Like Sunset Harbor, you can call apples, oranges, whatever. they've blossomed. They've embraced this. You know, the slideshow presenter made a lot of good points. The extra land, the extra land was basically useless. So let's put a good use to it. They seem to have thought through the best way to make it good for the project, but also for the Miami Beach residents. I'm a Miami Beach resident. I got kids. I frankly work in the area. And, you know, it seems like they've really thought about, you know, how to do this. You know, the university seems like they're welcoming neighbors. You know, if anybody's going to be, you know, loud saying it doesn't work for us, it's going to be them. They seem to be very cooperative. And I want, you know, to see 41st Street activity. I want to, you know, a bunch of wealthy people to be able to go to, you know, dinner at night and walk around there. That's what the city, the street needs. So I know I'm going to be affected by the construction, but I think it's well worth it to, you know, really see us, you know, kind of step up our game. Thanks for, you know, letting me say my piece.
No problem. Thanks for speaking. Let's go to Mr. Thompson next.
Okay, Ms. Thompson, do you swear under oath or affirm that any all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'd like to speak.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'd like to speak enthusiastically in favor of this change that they're asking for. As several other people have stated, it will, I think, help revitalize 41st Street as far as it'll put pressure on some of the businesses so that we can upgrade some of the businesses that are along there. And we'll also bring in some luxury housing that I think will also help stimulate some additional growth and interest in the area. I think it's also important to note that what they could build right there could be a giant block of buildings that would be facing the building. And what they have done, I think very respectful to the neighborhood, is make that a narrower building so that the impact on Alton and the neighbors, the residents that live there, will be much less. There will be an impact along the service road, but who cares about that? And so I think that what they are proposing here will be a giant help to the neighborhood and the revitalization of the neighborhood, and will make a great entrance to the city of Miami Beach. So I speak enthusiastically in favor of it, and I live 2 blocks away from there and have lived in Miami Beach for 21 years now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go to, there's someone calling from St. Patrick's.
Okay, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I am.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
I'm Father Roberto Cid, the pastor of St. Patrick's, and I would like to join those who spoke in opposition to the project. As you know, the city is not asking you to look at the new project. It's simply to affirm what you have already said. You voted after a thoughtful deliberation. You voted to reject all 3 ordinances, including those that did not deal with the height issues. But in particular about some of the things that were said today, to say that the rabbi has a conflict of interest is not to impugn his character. I consider him a very dear friend. It is just to make a statement of fact. He's a co-applicant, that's a fact. And then also Mr. Parker's comment that the developer is respectful of the setbacks. It's contradicted by the mere fact that we're discussing changes in setbacks. And then with regards to the FDOT parcel, if the city does not change the zoning, the FDOT will not close and it will remain a green space. And notice that even the lawyer for the developer repeatedly emphasized that they haven't closed yet. And even Mr. Mooney mentioned it in passing. I think that frankly, it is very disappointing that the city commission did what it did. They chose to ignore your recommendation. And I mean, it was so bad and so grotesque that even the lawyer for the developer stated that coming back to the planning board would be an exercise in futility. And I'm quoting verbatim, and it's in the public record for you to see. And then when somebody pointed out to him, or he realized that the mayor was doing his bidding, he changed, he interrupted and asked and said that he was willing to take the offer of the mayor, which prompted the mayor to backtrack and claim that he was not negotiating on behalf of the commission or the developer. So I think that you spoke loud and clear in August, on August the 25th.
2 minutes are up, Mr. Chair.
And if I...
All right, I think we lost Let's go to Holzer next.
Looks like he's back.
Do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I think, Z. Holzer, I think you're on mute.
Is that better?
Yes.
I affirm.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you all for having this meeting today and having my voice heard. My name is Zakaria Holzer. I have been a resident of Miami Beach for almost 34 years. My parents moved to Miami Beach when I was 4 years old. I grew up just 1 block away from 41st Street. I and some of my siblings currently still live in Miami Beach, all still within a few blocks of 41st Street. I simply do not understand at all how there's any deficit to our neighborhood from this idea. I'm not sure how many people here are actually familiar with Miami Beach. Anyone who lives here knows that 41st Street is the main artery and that restaurants are constantly going out of business and they're switching hands. And anyone who actually lives here knows that currently the major cause of traffic is the schools, which are located directly on 41st Street, like North Beach Elementary, or the schools that are 1 block off of 41st Street, like Nautilus School or St. Patrick's School. We've got the 15-mile-per-hour speed limits twice a day. These cause tremendous backups on 41st Street. If we want to do something about changing how many kids can come to the schools or teachers or other things like that, that would solve all your problems about traffic and clogs in Miami Beach. But no, this would not cause any issues for traffic, and this would help all the stores on Miami Beach. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, let's go to I'm not sure the name on the next participant, but let's just go there.
Okay. Do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I'm not sure. Yes, hi. This is Andres Sacion, I do.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I'm a born and raised resident of Miami Beach, and I also was an alumni. I am an alumni of St. Patrick's. I know the area like the back of my hand. These developers have been trying for the last 5+ years to get this project off the ground. As a matter of fact, I was involved back then originally on the sales process of trying to get this project sold. And the project originally and the current status of trying to build it so close to the university is a hindrance to try to sell this project. Separating it from the university is a big deal. I keep on hearing that, that this would be a deterrent or something bad for the area. And I would possibly agree if you didn't have the hospital, a massive hospital directly to the west, or the university directly to the north. But that's not the case. I mean, this building is going to be a beautiful building. It's not like if you open up Google Earth and you go through the site and you look directly to the west and to the east and to the north, you have St. Patrick's directly in front. You have multifamily buildings next to St. Patrick's. You have the hospital. I mean, I'd rather live next to this building if I was one of the 7 houses across the way, diagonally across the way, than living on North Bay Road next to the hospital. So I don't get that argument. I also think it would be great for people to buy into this building and walk their kids across to St. Patrick's if they're attending St. Patrick's. In addition, these type of buildings are typically about 50% occupied. So it's not like if you build X number of units that you're going to have all these people living on all these units full time, and it's going to cause all this traffic. I live in a building which is 40% occupied the majority of the time. So you don't have that level of traffic from this building. And I remember when I used to go to school there and Howard Johnson was replaced on that site. I mean, Howard Johnson would have massive number of cars all the time for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This is not Howard Johnson, or it's not a restaurant. It's a high-end residential project, which is not going to have the type of traffic that people were thinking it's going to have by being put on this site. As on the contrary, I think it's going to be a beautiful buffer as you come into Miami Beach or leaving Miami Beach versus just looking at the map of the hospital.
All right, thank you, Andres. Let's go to Woodsman, please.
Okay, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you, I affirm.
You have 2 minutes, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Ruben Glucksman. I live at 4000 Alton Road. I'm actually looking out my window at the property right now. I want to reiterate what was said by Mr. Parker, Mr. Gonzalez, how it will help I feel will help the 41st Street area, which is commercial. The part of Alton, I'm looking at it right now out my window, the part of Alton that it is touching is not residential. It's part of the exit to the highway. There's a little park where people come and go fishing, legally, not legally, I don't know. But, you know, the 41st corner that it's on is commercial. And we're not talking about doing the building or not. The building's already passed. It's that space. So I've seen this space. You know, it's a wasted space over there. If the building is pushed closer to Alton, it gives us a lot more room. Right now, on the south side of our building, there's a basketball court, and there's a football field on the north side. Those will not be there if the new zone is not passed. Those will be gone. I'm not sure if we're going to be allowed to keep those, you know, but it leaves a lot more room between the buildings. At least the kids can run around the building. There's not even room to run around the building if the building is not moved to the new zoning. So I'm definitely in favor of this. I have kids here. I've lived here for 10 years in Miami Beach, or in this building, and for 5 years, more than that, 20th. And I'm strongly in favor. And I have friends that are moving from Chicago, from New York, and people are not coming to stores come and go. There's many vacancies, even now with Corona, even more. People are going to Aventura and Hollywood, where things are being more developed than they are, instead of coming here. Thank you.
All right, let's go to Mr. Weitzman.
Okay, Mr. Weitzman, do you swear or under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I swear. Good morning.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
No problem. I wanted to say that I agree with Mr. Parker, and I completely in favor of this project. And I think it will only benefit all the restaurants on 41st Street. I own a restaurant on 41st Street, so I think it will only benefit myself and all the restaurants in this area. That's all.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Michelle Kahn.
Okay, Michelle, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. And I was wondering if I could ask for some additional time.
Let's hear you. Let's go ahead, Michelle, and then let's see where you are with the time.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like to say that I am all for developing this site and all for building a beautiful building and invigorating 41st Street. No one is suggesting that a building with lots of apartments per what's currently allowed should be built here. My major concern, as was the major concern of the planning board at the August 25th meeting, is increase in density and intensity with the addition of extra units. In this case, if the RM2 designation is given to the FDOT land, up to 41 additional units will be added to this space. Unbelievably, the planning board's unanimous decision to reject these 3 ordinances was ignored at the commission meeting. This is a real travesty of justice and a slap in the face to the dozens of residents who spent more than 5 hours waiting for the matter to come before the board at the August 25th meeting. When a 6-0 vote was taken on all 3 ordinances, any rational resident would think that they could rest easily knowing that their voice was heard. The average resident doesn't have time to continue spending going to commission meetings and planning board meetings. It's unfair to the many residents who already spent the time to make their voices heard to throw away the August planning board's initial vote. At the commission meeting, it was repeated incorrectly and continuously stated that the planning board voted against these ordinances due solely to the height or majoritively to the height of the projects. As anyone who attended the meeting or read the city manager's own memo to the commission knows, the planning board was very concerned with the density and intensity that these 3 ordinances would likely add to the property and how it would affect the surrounding neighborhood. Height was only a small factor on one of the 3 ordinances, not even the other 2. As such, it's completely disingenuous to say that height is the sole matter. Lastly, I would like to address this issue of the university's involvement, because it says on Mass Capital's website, and I'm quoting directly from the website right now, that the Mass Capital transferred an adjacent university's unused buildable square footage to the acquired site to increase the size of the development. So I really resent Mr. Larkin coming on last time and publicly accusing me of and insulting me and doing it at the same time to Gina. And if he gets a chance to rebut and say things, I would like to personally respond, because I am quoting from the developer's own website. So either that's true or the developer's lying to everyone falsely advertising. Thank you.
Okay. Is that, Michelle, are you pretty much wrapped? I don't want to cut you, but I mean, I think we got the hint. Do you have anything else you wanted to, just other points you wanted to finish?
I managed to squeeze it all in, but I'm happy to provide you with the link to the Mass Capitol's website that says exactly what I quoted. So I can't be accused of lying. And it's not a personal attack on Rabbi Zweig at all. I'm just saying this is the information I'm provided. And as a resident, I like to get to the truth and the facts based on the information that I have. Thank you.
Michelle, maybe you could put the link to that in the chat and we can take a look at something.
Yeah, Michelle, if you know how to do that, to put it in the chat, you can go ahead and do that.
There's no chat.
Oh, well, you can email it to everyone. Michelle, I know you have everyone's email. Let's go to, let's do something. Well, let's take Eisner next, and then we'll come back.
Okay. Do you swear under oath or affirm that any testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I affirm.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Shauna Eisner. I live on 40th and Meridian, a block away from the project. And I want to let you know that I fully support and I really want to encourage the approval of this project. I think that there are so many benefits to allowing this. The new requested footprint is, I find, so much more aesthetically pleasing, and there's so much more, significantly more green space. I don't understand how people are saying that this is going to be an eyesore on the Causeway or on Alton. I think that the slimmer design is so much more aesthetically pleasing and brings so much more greenery than that block-like fort design almost. And as a resident here that's really, really desperate for the revival of the 41st Street corridor specifically, and, you know, I've been here for all of my life, 30 years, and I've seen such a decline in the last 10 years. And, you know, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for the next 10 years. We're going to have to do something differently. And I think that this is a very, very positive way to start this. I think that this will bring clear benefits to our community and will only bring a positive change. Thank you so much for hearing me out.
Okay. Hey, let's do, PJ, can you bring up back the priest from St. Patrick's, because he got cut, and I want to make sure that I see his hand is raised, that we let him finish, please.
What would you like, Mr. Chair? Another minute?
Yeah, that'll be fine. He was already at the end of the time, but it was so abrupt, I would rather let him finish where he was.
So am I on? Am I on?
Yes, you are.
One more minute.
So yeah, I was concluding my thoughts that, you know, that basically what I asked the board, and I concur with everything that Ms. Khan said, and I asked the board simply to tell the commission that you meant what you said, and you said what you meant, and not to allow the commission to use the board for cover and to disregard the voice of the neighbors who have spoken loud and clear on August the 25th, and therefore tell the commission that you recommended against all three ordinances, even those that did not deal with an increase in height.
Okay. Perfect. I just wanted to make sure we allowed him to finish his thought, because you know, we're all living through this new environment of technology and not in person where he would have been able to finish. So let's go to Leah Hill, please.
Okay, Leah, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I affirm.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
All right. I just want to say my name is Leah Hill. I'm a resident of 4000 Alton Road in the Talmudic University building. I've been living here in my current residence for a little over 6 years, and in Miami Beach total coming on 8 years. Wanted to say thank you to everyone on the board and all the residents who took the time to come and be a part and voice their opinion. I wanted to just say that I fully support the efforts to make an approval of the new rezoning efforts. Not only do I agree in the revitalization of the 41st Street area and Miami Beach as a whole, specifically Mid Beach. My father-in-law lived for about 30 years. He just moved recently, but he lived in the 47th Street area where the Ritz-Carlton residences have been being built for the last few years. And I know in that whole residence area, just a few blocks away, a few minutes drive, it has a huge impact on that area already. Like just the new families that are moving into the area and like the more affluent community that's turning up over there. I also just wanted to say in terms of traffic, I've lived in this area for, like I said, about 8 years in Miami Beach and in Tommie University. When you drive off of the Julia Tuttle into our complex, into our apartment, it's maybe a 5 to 10 second drive. Like we're not even driving through the residential areas. I can maybe count just on one hand the times that I've driven through the actual streets in this area. Just saying that it's not, I don't believe that will affect the residential driving traffic. I definitely agree with Mr. Ryder Thompson and Shauna Eisner, who mentioned that the new layout with the approved setbacks will just be so much more visually appealing from the Alton Road aspect, as well as the 907 State Road, from the Julia Tuttle aspect. I think it'll just be more beautiful all around and a win-win for everybody involved. And thank you for taking the time to listen to us.
No problem. Let's go to Ileana.
Okay, Ileana, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Ileana, I think you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
There you are. Yes. Do you so swear?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, the first thing I want to say is that the document to be on this webinar was just put in my mailbox, and I received it late yesterday. They said they dropped it in on Sunday, but in fact, nobody picks up mail on Sunday, so I didn't see it until yesterday. So I had to cancel a lot of meetings today to be here. I don't like that my other neighbors, I live right behind in the Meridian area of where this building is proposed. So I am, as opposed to the residents that are in the 4000 Alton Road, that are across the street and down the way, we are directly impacted. This is direct impact, not, so as you come into Causeway, I would make a right to go into this building. I would make a right to go to my house as opposed to making a left. So as far as the residents that are saying it's not going to affect traffic, I would like to know what they are thinking. This, of course, is going to affect traffic. Just one more car affects traffic. So a whole building is going to affect traffic. As opposed to the rabbi, I don't even remember his name, that spoke and said he has no interest in this, but yet he's one of the sellers, then that his remark should be crossed out completely, because if he's a seller, he's a principal of the transaction, he should be not considered as an unbiased person. This is going to cause a lot of traffic to our area. It's not going to impact at all as far as Sunset Harbor. That was a whole project that had businesses. It has a whole different kind of flow. This is just one building with a lot of units. They're not high end either. They keep on saying high end. High end is the Ritz-Carlton. This is not high end. So I would like to have clarification as to what it is that they're trying to build there, as far as what is the cost of those units, what kind of community they're planning to build, so that we can be better informed. And like I said, better informed means giving us information and not just dropping it off in a mailbox on a Sunday when nobody picks up the mail. And all my neighbors are even missing this meeting because they were not even aware this is going on. So although I understand that whoever has moved up to
2 minutes are up.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to it's SBC.
Good morning. Yeah, this is Stephen Channels.
Hi, good morning. Do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. My name is Stephen Channels. I've lived in Miami Beach for 22 years, and I live just a few blocks north of the subject property. I want to speak to just a single narrow issue, and that's the zoning process itself. As I said during my remarks in the last hearing, the issue isn't about the developer, for me at least, or perhaps even what they want to do with it. Everything I've seen from MAST and from Arquitectonica has been professional and interesting, even if I might disagree with parts of it. But it's not about the players, it's about the integrity of the process. Last month's discussion seemed to be dominated by whether the city should rezone the FDOT parcel, but it appears, at least based on what staff presented earlier, that state law mandates that the city must rezone it from GU to something. The question then is what that something should be. There seems to be a rush to rezone the parcel to further the interests of a single property owner. While that may be appropriate in the context of seeking a variance, it shouldn't be what drives the adoption of a zoning designation. No one doubts the need for revitalization of the business district. However, what designation is appropriate should be determined by a comprehensive analysis of what makes sense for the needs of the community, as well as the municipal needs of the city, and what designation would best promote the so-called activation of that 41st Street corridor, not one property owner's vision of it. There's a 41st Street Planning Commission committee considering that corridor, which admittedly may just be a piecemeal discussion of the broader issue, but it does underscore that the city already recognizes the need for comprehensive planning for the area, and acquiescing to these applications would seem to jump that process. So for those reasons, because I don't think the zoning change has been fully vetted, I respectfully ask that the planning board vote against the approval of the applications. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Let's go to Simancas.
Okay, good morning. Do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. My name is...
Thank you. You have to...
Oh, sorry. My name is Mitil. I live on Garden Avenue. Nobody's questioning here the capabilities of the architect. I'm a realtor myself. I am pro-development, I'm against bigger development. We all agree that something nice can come up in that lot, but I am very concerned about the increase in density and the traffic. And I wish I could post right here the pictures that I have taken in the last 2 weeks of the traffic that we have on Alton Road when you're coming from the Causeway and you turn right from 41st to, it will be 39th Street. Not only from the people going to the Talmudic University, but from the people on the carpool lane, waiting to pick up their kids at St. Patrick's. Sometimes we cannot even access our own street. So, the traffic is already bad. We are increasing, now that the architect is increasing the units, that's way more cars. And if people are talking about, the revival of 41st Street, how about developing first and providing good options for people to support those business? The revival of 41st Street does not depend on a mammoth big building, has nothing to do. And regarding the city commission, after the deceiving campaign that they are putting out in favor of the Marina Park without mentioning that huge building, I have zero respect for them, and zero respect because they did not keep into consideration the votes that the planning board had the last time against this project. So that's my 5 cents.
Okay, so next we have, let's go ahead with the next name.
Okay, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
What's the name?
Santos?
Yes, this is, I was not going to speak. This is Deacon Tony Santos at St. Patrick's, and I'm also a resident of Miami Beach. If you'd like to swear me in.
Do you so swear or affirm?
I affirm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
I was not going to speak, but because Father Sid was cut off the way he was cut off, and I have a significant issue with the manner in which all of this process is taking place. I've been a resident of Miami Beach for 37 years. My wife has been a resident of Miami Beach for 46. And the fact remains that everybody here, we do not need traffic studies to know that the traffic around this intersection, this entire interchange, is beyond unacceptable. It is a D in the FDOT grading system, and that's a very bad score. I can tell you personally, I have not been able to make it to masses or other celebrations more than 10 times due to traffic blocking my ability to move from my home on the Venetian Islands to St. Patrick's Church. I can tell you that we have been locked up in our house, unable to move due to the incredible amount of traffic that sometimes flows, both from MacArthur, Julia Tuttle, and Alton Road, blocking Venetian Causeway to the point of exasperation. The beach is overbuilt. The beach does not have the infrastructure to support this kind of density increase. The beach cannot continue to play this kind of a game when the infrastructure is so inadequate that it cannot even handle a simple increase in traffic when people come back to work. We are already experiencing it as the COVID-19 restrictions have lifted a little bit and people are beginning to come back to work, that we are now running into traffic jams at that intersection. I ran into one yesterday. I ran into one this morning. It is not acceptable. The planning board spoke loudly and clearly in August. It needs to stick to its guns. The credibility of the city government, the credibility of all of its boards, and most importantly, the credibility of the elected officials is on the line right now. And if you don't believe that, then you need to ask yourself why it is that residents from nearly every single neighborhood on Miami Beach, and I'm talking from 85th Street all the way down, are against this project in the manner that it is being presented to you today and was presented to you in August and has been presented to you for months. So you need to ask yourselves what is going on and why is it that so many people are not in favor of this project? That is all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think Greenberg is next.
Mr. Chairman, may
Yes,
I ask
David.
you how many more people are going to be testifying?
It's
And-
about 4 currently, but I don't control the entry and the exit, but it looks about 4 more.
Okay,
I think, Mr. Chair, the next name I see is Hector Villamar.
We called earlier and he didn't speak, so I'm
here.
just-
I am
Oh,
here.
there
I
he is.
was here the entire
Hi,
time.
Mr. Villamar. Do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony that you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, and I would like for extra time. I don't think I'm going to need it, but I'd like it. I don't want to be cut off just in case.
Just go ahead with the 2 minutes you have and then we'll go from there, please.
Thank you. First of all, I got to say I am so disappointed in the commission. They chose a non-resident developer over the residents. You, the planning board, submitted your recommendations and they completely ignored it. It is horrible what they did. And you need to tell them that you do represent the residents and not some non-resident builder. And I've got to say, there's been a lot of talk about development in this area. I grew up on Miami Beach. I live right next to St. Patrick's, right across from where this development is going to be. On my block alone, there are 3 houses that are being remodeled. So yes, there is development here. There are people who live here who enjoy the neighborhood. And the issue, I think the biggest issue here is the FDOT parcel. I think there's been a lot of misinformation that was given at the commission meeting. It is my understanding that there was a meeting held on August 28th with James Wolf, the FDOT District 6 Secretary, and Daniel Iglesias, the FDOT Director of Development, where they stated that that FDOT parcel could be given to Miami Beach for no cost. That is not what was said at the commission meeting. I think it is important to have this fully vetted to make sure exactly what FDOT's position would be and to make that public and part of a record rather than this misinformation that was given at the meeting. I wholeheartedly disapprove of any variances in the setbacks and in zoning the FDOT as an RM4 or RM2, whatever it was. It should be, if at all it is rezoned, it should be rezoned residential. And I appreciate Mr. Wider, I believe I'm saying your name, David Wider's questions. I think those were very pointed. Thank you very much for representing the residents rather than this non-resident builder. Thank you.
Okay, I think now we're at Greenberg.
Okay. Do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you.
As a resident of 4000 Alton Road, I would like to say that I'm totally in favor of the new plans that in the place where the building would be built would definitely give us more space. And I appreciate the one trying to develop the building, taking into consideration our needs. That's all.
All right. I think the representative is next. Nick.
Okay. To our next speaker, do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Absolutely, Nick. How are you?
How are you? Good to see your name.
I'm good. Hello, everybody. This is Michael Greco, and I want to thank a few of the planning board members who took my calls over the last week as I was trying to get caught up. You know, this issue came across my desk because of the FDOT parcel, and it's great to kind of hear the input. And I got to tell you, I don't miss city politics after listening to some of this, but it's great to hear some of the input either from my friend Hector or on the other side, my friend Roger. So it's good to see that people are chiming in and letting their voices be heard. I don't have an issue. I want to make it clear. I don't have an issue with the FDOT sale. I think, adding any revenue to our Department of Transportation coffers at this point any effort to do so is a valid thing. Hector just made some comments about there being a non-resident builder. I will tell you that I do know the developer. He's my former neighbor down here south of 5th, and he does have a track record. He did a nice project down here in the neighborhood, so I don't want anybody to get distracted by the concept of him being a non-resident. I think that's kind of a red herring. But any effort to encourage positive development, responsible development that works well in an area is definitely something to consider. I don't think that the planning board should be hamstrung by any prior decisions because this is a new presentation. I did not support the height increase last time around. I sat quiet because I thought it was going to die a pretty quick death on its own. But this time around, I lean in support of the project. I think that the efforts to make some conservative requests are a responsible way to do the right thing. And I really think the city needs to look at people who are trying to invest in our city the right way and not move the goalpost too much in the process. So with that, I appreciate your time, and I'm going to follow up with some folks. And if they have any questions of me, and I definitely have questions of them, I'm going to take advantage of that over the next few days. But I do thank you for your time, and I hope everybody's staying safe. And, we'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you.
Good to see you, Mike.
Thanks, Representative. We appreciate your comments. Let's go to, and David, I think we're whittling down to the last two. So let's go to Christine next.
Okay, Christine, do you swear under oath or affirm that any testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
My thoughts are that it's being proposed as a choice between putting a building there or not, and I don't see how that has to be. It's the rezoning that's being called into question. So if it is not rezoned and the space between Talmudic and the new building is to be respected, build a smaller building. That would mean, I believe, 40 or so fewer units in the building. And I think 41st Street and the beautification goals of the city could still see benefits of the building with 40 or so less units. There should be a traffic study done by an impartial organization. I have one question. When talking about the green space around the building and in between the building and Talmudic, is that public green space or private? If the rezoning is granted.
I should think it's private.
I would suggest if you'd like to finish your comments now, and then we can have the applicant respond in their rebuttal.
It would have to be private property, yeah.
So if it's private, it isn't like the public is going to be benefiting from any green space. Thank you. Those are my comments.
And Mr. Chairman, we can ask the applicant to confirm that in their rebuttal.
Sure, we can do that. And the last person is Rivka Zweig.
Okay. Do you swear under oath or affirm that any and all testimony you'll give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Hi, yes, I affirm.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm just using my grandmother's Zoom, but my name is Chana Rafaelov. I'm a resident of Miami Beach, and I'm in support of the 4,000 Alton project. I believe this project will bring life back to the Mid-Beach area. I've been living on the beach myself for over 25 years, and I'd like to see more people living and walking on 41st Street, supporting our businesses. I've seen many businesses open and unfortunately close because they don't have the support here. And I truly think this will enhance our development of the city. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen.
All right. Do you guys see any more of the public waiting? I don't see anybody on my screen. Okay, with that, let's close the opportunity for the public to speak, and let's yield some time to the
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first comment is the exchange between David Weeder and Jay Parker was lengthy, but I do want to talk about it because the zoning changes that we're proposing will not lead to any changes in the single family district, the RM1 district. What it will do is give a much larger base of customers that will patronize the business along Arthur Godfrey. The retail scene on Arthur Godfrey is somewhat uneven. There are some hits and some misses, but I feel that with this additional base of customers, it'll grow and it'll diversify the businesses that are there now. David said there's a large number of banks along Arthur Godfrey. No one would dispute that, but there is room for change. And with a newer residential base, I think you'll find a more diverse retail scene that could come to Arthur Godfrey. And by the way, the business owners of Arthur Godfrey know that. That's why you all receive multiple letters of support from them. With regard to massing, at the end of this, I'm going to have Ray Ford just kind of show you a couple of perspectives from the neighborhood just to the east of us, looking back to the west. But bear in mind that the height will be 85 feet. This is not an imposing tower. The setbacks match what we did in 2014 with variances granted by the Board of Adjustment, one exception. There, in that iteration of the project was much closer to Alton. It was at the 20-foot mark. Here, we're pushing it back all the way to the 50-foot mark. So it's a much more substantial area. With regard, again, to the relationship between Talmudic University and our client, they are two different property owners within the same unified development site. We are not using any of the development rights from Talmudic University. If you look at the website from 2014, what that was referencing was at the time the acquisition of the property by Cumula from Talmudic University. It is within that property. That is where the development rights resided. We are not talking about taking development rights from Talmudic University as it is now configured and incorporating them into our project. That is simply a false statement. And Rabbi Zweig, again, is not a part of our development team. He is our neighbor. He leads Talmudic University, but he is not a part of our development team. With regard to the remarks by Mr. Channels, your professional staff, as a reminder, because I think this is sometimes lost, because they are the experts here. They are recommending in favor of the rezoning and redesignation to RM2. The zoning district must match the land use designation. This is not a suggestion coming from your code. This is a mandatory requirement. RM2 is the only appropriate land use designation. And the RM2 zoning district is the only zoning district that is consistent with the RM2 land use designation. If the city were ultimately to rezone the FDOT parcel to RM1 or townhouse, that would open up the city to a reverse spot zoning claim by giving that parcel lesser rights than all of the surrounding properties. With regard to what the city manager said, based at his discussion with FDOT at the end of August, I'm going to give you a quote. This was on October 17th. The city manager said this at 2:58 p.m. He said, "I will tell you that I was on a conference call in August with FDOT officials, Daniel Iglesias and others. Eric Carpenter was on with me. It was a meeting that FDOT set up. they invited us to the meeting. Interestingly, the invite to the meeting was mass capital surplus discussion. So, and at that time, they indicated it was going to surplus for purposes of selling it somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million. I indicated to them that given the size of the lot and utility, there was no reason to pay any price like that. Got it. And not to mention that we didn't have any funding to do that. That was a direct quote from the city manager. With regard to one of the last speakers, Christine, she was mentioning some greenbelt. There might be some confusion. The greenbelt that I was referring to is the restricted FDOT right-of-way that's adjacent to our property along State Road 907 and the Julia Tuttle Causeway. Again, next to the Julia Tuttle Causeway, it's about 66 feet wide at its widest point. With regard to State Road 907, it's about 43 feet wide at its widest point. A substantial greenbelt in between our property line and the edge of pavement. And Mr. Chairman, I don't know if we can do this, but Ray Fort, does he have the ability to share his screen just to show 2 slides that gives a perspective of what our building would look like? If you're
you can add the profiles sites, because I know that came up as part of the community input or conversation. So PJ, can you throw it to Ray for screen control?
Okay, great. So I'm going to share the screen. Okay, you should be able to see a view that is from Berry Street, looking back towards Alton Road, which is running essentially parallel to the bottom of the page, but 1 block up. Just want to check. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the option that does not have any revised setbacks. This is under the current zoning, 85 feet. And even in this scenario, we've done a 50-foot setback still for the building. We haven't gone out to the 20 feet for the townhomes. Then when we look at the revised setbacks, we're able to reorient the building and take the majority of the massing off of Alton Road. So when we look at it from the residential side of the project, which is the Berry Street side of the project, the building essentially has a much greater setback because it's receding in the distance, and we only have to deal with the short end of the building, which is in this quadrant here. So these are the 2 views that we've prepared that show the massing from a street level view. And I can toggle back and forth between the 2.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I just have five minutes for rebuttal as we usually do. Those 5 minutes have expired. So would you like to allow additional time or
I really just want him to get through the profile shots. I think that can be informative. Ray, do you have more profile shots or that's it?
Those are the ones I have, just the 2 you see here, the axonometric imagery in the original presentation and the site plans in the original presentation.
I have a question, follow-up for Mr. Larkin.
Mr. Chair?
When it's
Wait, one second. Michael, I'm sorry, Mr. Larkin, just so I have a couple Michaels here.
Yeah.
So would you just want to finish up, or you want us to start taking questions?
Mr. Chairman, I'm done with my rebuttal. I'm very eager to take the questions from the board members.
Okay, go ahead, Michael.
So just for the board and for all the folks who spoke, who seem to have, some of them, and I don't want to speak for anybody, but seem to have the impression that that this is a yes or no, thumbs up or thumbs down idea or proposal. How would you describe, from the applicant's perspective, the as of right versus, in other words, you're owner of the property now? What are you asking for that's different from your current rights and property rights?
So if I had to summarize it, it would be really two significant changes to the RM2 regulation, because the rezoning redesignation to me are straightforward. They're very simple. They don't need explanation. But with regard to the setbacks, you know, a reduction in setbacks here is a very good thing. If you kept the setbacks as they are right now, based upon the width of the property, when I say property, the whole unified development site, you know, the interior side yard setback is a function of the percentage of the width of the property. So as a result, it pushes our new construction really uncomfortably close to Talmudic University. By reducing the setbacks and pushing the new construction toward the edge of our property, adjacent to what are really just two very heavily trafficked roads. Julia Tuttle is the most heavily trafficked road, but State Road 907 is a close second based upon the volume of traffic that goes there. So I think that is the first significant change we are asking for that really is in the interest of our neighbor. And we're not asking for any change to the front setback along Alton. We're going to be 50 feet from that, which is an improvement from our 2014 DRB approval. And the second change is that we are asking to remove the liner requirement along State Road 907, which requires an active use. And
Can you describe what that is, please?
Sure. So whether you're talking about a standalone parking garage or what I call a pedestal parking garage associated with a multifamily building or a commercial building, at the ground level, the city a long time ago adopted a regulation that says there should be some interaction between pedestrians and the area in front of a parking area. The pedestrians should not be looking at a blank wall or even some elaborate screening in between the sidewalk and the parking garage area. So what the city commission did, they said there must be a liner requirement. There must be an active use. And that makes sense when there is a sidewalk adjacent to your property where pedestrians go. But along State Road 907 and along the Julia Tuttle Causeway, there is no sidewalk. And so there's really no use to have the liner requirement in those two locations. So those are the two significant changes that we're asking for the RM2 regulations that govern this property.
Well, thank you, Michael. If it's okay with the chair and the board, I also have a question for Mr. Miguel, if he's okay with it.
Sure.
So you've obviously owned this property for some time, and you know, we as a community, the Mid-Beach community in particular, I don't live in Mid-Beach, but I think I could speak for a lot of folks who say they've been through a fair amount of stress this year with all these changing proposals. What at this point, how would you describe your vision? You know, you're known, you've got an excellent reputation as a builder and developer of developing, you know, you developed a really beautiful project in my neighborhood, but how would you describe your vision for this property if you get the current, if it goes as you would like with this current proposal?
Are you asking that from an aesthetic standpoint or from a different perspective?
Any way you'd like to answer. What would you say to the community? You're going to be building, you're going to have a big impact on this community, the folks who live nearby, even at 85 feet, you're going to have a big impact. You know, what would you say to that community, and how do you view this as a contribution from your perspective?
So very, very fair and valid question. And I'd like to go back and reference the project that you're mentioning here, which is Louver House, which is a property that we developed south of 5th Street. And our approach to that, which would be similar to this one, is to try to create a sense of place and try to give it a warm feel and a warm design that makes it feel homey. And if people have had the opportunity to go see the project that we did south of 5th Street called Louver House, you'll realize how our execution really integrated well with that neighborhood. We embraced the landscape canopy over there. We used warm color tones, and we really made them almost like individual homes within that neighborhood. And the idea here is to represent a similar level of warmth and sensitivity to design and the community that it's going to be sitting. And I hope that answers your question and that's helpful.
Well, it does, and I agree with your statement about that, how that building integrated into the community as you walk up and down Meridian Ave. It really just very much fits in with the feeling on the street. The prior images that you shared or that you worked on in the past, proposed in the past, were glass contemporary. So do you have something different in mind for this property?
I think maybe in the prior images, maybe the renderings were not, the resolution was not there, or the aesthetic was not being communicated as well as maybe it should have. But, you know, a lot of the mullions and a lot of the framing of the glass and all those things was going to be this like a gold bronze type color. The color of the building was going to be a little bit warmer. And, you know, for purposes of presentation, maybe the resolution or quality of the renderings was not there. But the idea is to really do an explorative type exercise, take our time in design, and do the same thing we did at Louver House, and that's do something beautiful and first class for the community.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any specific? Anything to offer regarding? From my perspective, 200 units in that location, 250 units in that location, residential only. Is it your plan that it be residential only, 100% residential? What would you say to those folks who are concerned about traffic in their neighborhood?
So my plan is to make it a residential project. If you look at the most highly densely developed neighborhoods of Miami Beach, which would be the area between 50th and 60th Street and Collins, as well as the neighborhood in which you reside in, which is South of 5th Street. As you can see in those neighborhoods, residential uses are not high intensity uses and are not causers of traffic. Typically the causes of traffic, and I am not going to pretend to be the expert, I would defer to our traffic expert to really say this, but I'm just saying from my perspective, residential uses are not high intensity uses and commercial uses are much more impactful to high intensity uses. So we are intending on developing a residential project on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions?
I mean, I don't mind having a discussion. I don't have any questions, but do we want to have a discussion at all?
Yeah, let's do that. So basically the presenting team, we're going to just hold them for a bit so that we can have a discussion. So with that, Daniel, do you want to open up with any point of discussion there?
Yeah, I mean, I do think I want the public to understand that what's in front of us, we don't have a way of blocking the rezoning. Most certainly it's going to get rezoned from GU to something else. We can certainly try to zone it from an RM1 to an RM1 instead of an RM2. I don't think that's going to have a significant impact on the net square footage that we're trying to avoid, and it's going to create greater complications on the site and being able to distribute the massing. It seems like this developer is going to move forward with the development one way or another. I certainly wish he wasn't buying the FDOT lot, so that would make it less complicated and avoid having to redistribute even more massing. But I do agree that the setbacks are warranted based on the existing setbacks being extremely large, and reducing the setbacks to a shorter setback would certainly allow for the massing to be redistributed and moved away from the university, which would likely make it a much more enjoyable project or site overall. My comments remain the same. I still think that it's very difficult to develop the site, seeing that it was planned as one site and the fact that it was sold and now developers trying to develop on a single site, what they're referring to as a unified site, is very difficult. I I don't know what the challenges were with the last designs that they tried to do here and what resulted in the project not coming out of the ground, but I presume many of the same variables will apply, that this will be a very difficult project to sell and to develop based on its location and based on its proximity to the existing university. I do want the public to know that a traffic study, that this project would come back to the planning board after these LDR amendments. And when it does come back, a traffic study will be required. I'm assuming this project would exceed 50,000 square feet. Planning staff can confirm that to us, but overall a traffic study will be required.
Excuse me, Daniel. Just to clarify, this would not be coming back to the planning board. The 50,000 square foot requirement is only for commercial projects or commercial districts, properties exceeding 50,000 square feet. So unless they had mechanical parking, this would just go to the design review board for the overall design approval. However, you're right, there will be a traffic study submitted as part of that would be reviewed and peer reviewed by our transportation department, as well as the city's outside peer reviewer.
All right, well, that's perfect. Thank you very much for that clarification. At least we know that now. A traffic study would be required. Since you responded, Michael, with the liner requirement, what do you think you would require from a design review perspective on the shielding the pedestal? So we're removing the liner requirement. I'm not against that. What would be the alternative? Difference in material, landscaping, what do you think city staff would require? And do we want to try to codify that here, or should we just not allow the design review process to address that?
I would leave that up to the design review process. I know that there is a pretty wide landscape area abutting both of the areas that this waiver would apply to in terms of the liner. So I think it'd be a combination of ensuring that there is adequate landscape buffer on the remaining FDOT parcel, as well as additional landscaping on the 4,000 Alton Road itself, as well as a high quality design screening structure for the parking garage. Because I know we're going to see, I think from the public perspective, you're going to see the garage, above the trees at a certain point. So we're going to want to see a high level design to that garage as viewed from all angles. So I think it'd be a matter of carrying that well-executed design that the DRB would require down to the ground level.
Okay. My other comments I wanted to make was I did receive a lot of communication from the community by email saying that the developer is building as of right. And I just want to put on the record that he is not building as of right. They are requesting LDR amendments in order to better the project, but it is not being built as of right just because they reduced the height requirements. I just wanted to make that clarification to those listening. The last comments have to do with 41st Street and the revitalization. I don't know that a single development in itself by its own is going to contribute to the revitalization that the residents of Mid-Beach are looking for. I certainly feel there was a conversation we had about redevelopment and different zonings on the same lots on 41st Street. And I certainly would welcome bringing back a discussion item and inviting our new economic development director and other planning staff and other city staff to have a comprehensive discussion on the planning and a master plan for 41st Street. I know there's a plan for the redoing of the FDOT roadway, and I know there's a GeoBomb project, but I don't consider those by themselves a revitalization plan. I certainly have walked 41st Street several times. I am seeing more vacancies. I'm seeing less patronage of the local residents. Maybe that's as a result of a lack of available restaurants and retailers that they want to choose. But I do think some type of local charrette with the community, even hosted by the planning board, to have some feedback and conversation for the revitalization, because I do believe that 41st Street deserves revitalization. I certainly don't feel a single project at the entrance is going to bring any of that revitalization that they're seeking. And I don't want anyone to be misguided that one single development can create the change that's needed. I certainly think they have a successful neighborhood with significant disposable income that can contribute to a vibrant commercial district. We just need to give those residents a reason to go there. And I remain open for any additional comments the board might have on the 4000 Alton Road project. Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Mooney or to Michael, and then a comment. Number one, if the FDOT gave the land to the city, how many square feet would that land comprise?
Michael, do you know what the square footage of the standalone site is?
I think it's a little over 17,000 square feet.
Okay. My comments.
Yeah, it's like half an acre, David. A little less than half an acre.
Okay. It seems to me that I know the city's strapped for revenue right now, but I agree mostly with Daniel's comments about the revitalization of 41st Street. I moved to Royal Palm Avenue and 44th Street in 1952 when I was 10 years old from a house on Post Avenue, and I grew up in that neighborhood. I went to Nautilus and I went to North Beach, and I understand that neighborhood. Most of the people who live in that neighborhood like the fact that their children can walk to school. And that neighborhood, let's ask ourselves, what is a neighborhood? A neighborhood is an area of the city, in my humble opinion, that has developed a character, a lifestyle, a place where people want to live. And many of the people who live in that neighborhood, or at least when I did, perhaps I was too young to enjoy it, but enjoy the quality of the neighborhood for what it is. So we as a board have to strike a balance between the responsible development. We have to consider massing of the buildings. We have to consider setbacks. We have to consider what business opportunities will come as a result of any decisions we make concerning development. I don't buy the idea that the business revitalization of 41st Street will come from this building. And I also believe that the revitalization of 41st Street is a consequence of all the homes in that neighborhood. It isn't a commercial district, although 41st Street pretends to be a commercial district. It still has the same essential character it did as when I was a child. There was a drugstore, there was a bank, there was a hardware store. It was a neighborhood. It was a neighborhood that people love to live in and still do. So I respect those homeowners who come and say to us that they don't want to change the nature of their neighborhood beyond responsible development. And I don't really see this building as an asset to the neighborhood. I'd rather see the city make a park in that land so that people coming across the causeway will see a beautiful landscape park and not another glass structure from Arquitectonica or any other architect. Not that Arquitectonica is any better or any worse or any more creative than the others. It could be Zaha Hadid if she was still around. So when I was on the Historic Preservation Board, one of the things we looked at was the ability of a neighborhood to maintain its character, the massing of the buildings, the structure of the buildings, the way it looks. And the setbacks and the other stuff are technicalities that attempt to preserve, that are all basically attempting to preserve the nature of the neighborhood. Well, let me get to the traffic. Alton Road is a nightmare of traffic in the morning. People trying to get on the Tuttle Causeway from Mid Beach, North Beach, people coming north on Alton Road. And the increased density as provided by that building is not going to be a help to anybody. It's going to be an additional complication of this building. One person who was here before said, "Oh, you know, this building is only going to be 40% occupied." Well, if it's only going to be 40% occupied, why build it in the first place? Put enough apartments there to satisfy a much smaller potential occupancy, and keep the density down and keep the project what it was. Keep our vote as it was, and inform the commission that we do not buy these arguments of the developer to change the character of this neighborhood, and certainly not to be a benefit to business on 41st Street. There's a synagogue there. There's several synagogues. There's a post office on 39th Street. It's a neighborhood where people can walk to, and once this pandemic is over, it will resume its character. And this building is just an additional piece of development that is not helpful to anybody but the developer and the people who are advocating for it. So I am not persuaded by anything I've heard today, or that gives me any reason to change my vote from the past meeting. And I appeal to the board members to consider very carefully the change that is now offered to us. We're responsible for keeping this city what it should be: responsible development, context with the neighborhood, and with a neighborhood as the primary beneficiary of our restraint. I know all the members of the board have listened very patiently and don't want to hear any more long-winded speeches from me, but this is an interesting proposition for us, and I think it tells who we are as a board. So vote your conscience now, and vote your conscience on November 3rd.
All right. Do we have any other?
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak on this?
I have a few additional comments, but I'm happy to wait, and I've spoken a lot. So if anybody else wants to go, I'm happy to be patient.
Sure. Go ahead, Isa.
I think in response to some public comment that there's no public benefit from private green space, I think we all on Miami Beach benefit from any green space that can help water be absorbed into the ground versus running off into the bay. Trash, fertilizers, pollutants degrade our coastal ecosystem. So this project having a more huge bottom mass now that we've taken out the height, I don't know if I'm in love with that. I also think we do need to acknowledge that the beach is a sinking city. Development is going to happen, and I kind of would have liked to see the city, the developers, and the neighborhood work together a little bit more to shape this into being a resilient project that kind of helped us with some of our infrastructure issues, roads, sewage, drainage. Any new projects really do need to help us alleviate and address these issues. I probably could be in support of this. I do see, if they're going to build, how passing this does do a better project than having it on top of its neighbor. The FDOT parcel probably would have been better as a public park to revive 41st Street. I think I'm up in North Beach. I do use North Beach. We have a lot of outdoor area, small businesses, and that's what's really missing on 41st Street. There's no public green space. There's really no setbacks for sidewalks. Cafes don't really have outdoor areas. Parking's not even that great. So I agree. I don't think this building is what's going to be that revives it. Probably an investment into current buildings that are already there. Even looking at retail spaces in North Beach and Mid Beach, they all need a facelift. Sunset Harbor does well because there's new building. You walk inside, it has new AC, you know, new drywall, and we don't really have that on other parts of the beaches. But if this does pass, I do hope that the city and the design review board kind of push the developers to do something that incorporates a little bit more resiliency and innovation. So my 2 cents on the project.
Thank you, Asa. Go ahead, Michael. Or I'm sorry, Nick. Nick, go ahead, please.
Sure. Yeah. You know, I agree with, I think this is a good conversation, and I agree with a lot of the comments my fellow board members are making. I will say a few things about this. One is, you know, thinking just kind of realistically about this. Something will be built here. I was, you know, wholeheartedly opposed to it in the past, and I apologize. I'm a professor at FIU. It was our first day of class at the last meeting. So I wasn't actually there to vote. If I had, I would have voted in opposition as well. It would have been 7-0. But I was not opposed to the zoning change, and staff was in support of it at that time. They're still in support of it at this time. I think it makes a lot of sense if we're going to rezone to zone it to a use that could be unified. So we have a unified site. This is a unique site. It's not a typical single family residential neighborhood. There's a big hospital there. It has highway overpasses. It's a bizarre, strange site. And I think it's a predicament as a result. But I think given the reality that something will be built, it's much lower now than what's proposed, which I was opposed to. And I think, you know, overwhelmingly the public was opposed to it. I'm more in support of this happening now. I'm in support of, you know, modifying the setbacks. I think we get a much more responsible building configuration. I like the perspectives we saw. I hope that Ray, you could present more of those heading north up Alton towards 41st Street. But the fact remains, I think the profile and configuration of it is much better, much more advantageous from a kind of urban perspective. And then, you know, I think with those things in mind, it's just a question of whether that FDOT parcel is sold and rezoned. If it is sold, it must be rezoned. And I think the previous proposal had a park proposed that was not really convincing in terms of mitigating water retention. There is a ton of green space there as a result of the overpasses and interchanges. So I don't think just keeping a, you know, less than a half acre of green space is going to benefit that much. I do agree as much as possible helps, but my decision is more based on is the impact of this building, which will be built, you know, with or without the FDOT parcel, there's going to be traffic impact. So is the addition of 40 more units as a result, is that, you know, the straw that breaks the camel's back? Regrettably, the traffic in the city, it is bad. I mean, we are a small, dense city that has developed a lot.
Did we lose Nick?
I think
he's frozen.
Probably pressed his mute button.
Oh, there you go, Nick. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You were talking about terrible traffic.
It's terrible. And then I said that and somebody muted me. But listen, I still think it's a much better, more responsible project. I like the development. I'm in favor of it in this case. I wasn't in the last case, but I'm more in favor of it now. I support the zoning change and hope that, you know, it helps create a better configuration for the lot.
Hey, Mark, did you want to add something?
Yeah. Sorry, I've just been having trouble this morning with my system. You know, I'm kind of with Nick on this because I'm always thinking about, you know, there's certain things you can't stop and there's certain things you can. And I think that there's, at some point, there is going to be development here. You know, just like we had on that one site behind the HSBC building, right? Where there was a lot of community outrage over that parcel. But, you know, changing it from commercial to residential would actually have a far less impact on the community. It would have been less traffic and it would have been a better project. I think something's going to get built here. And so I think that I'm not sure 40 units is so material to our community that it's going to make a huge difference in the traffic there. The traffic is the traffic there. And 40 units, you know, it's not like a commercial establishment with a lot or an office building. There's a lot in and out there. So, you know, the alternative, right, may not be so great. It'll have, the massing won't be as great. I do like the fact that when you acquire the FDOT parcel, you deal with the setbacks, you get the more slender building there, which I think will be much better. It'll look much better for the community. So, I'm not sure it has a huge impact on business there. And I agree with a lot of the conversation. The business is going to happen from the neighborhood and the business owners, not from one building that's being developed here. So, this is a tough one. I don't believe what our last decision, is a binding decision on anybody. And by the way, what we're doing here isn't a binding decision either, because we're just making recommendations or to the city commission, who's going to make a decision based upon our recommendations. So, I think that the alternative of not buying that parcel, of developing something there that's going to be very close to the Talmudic University building may end up being a lot worse than going ahead with this. I just don't think we're going to stop this. Someone's going to develop the site at some point. And so, we have an opportunity here to help develop a better property on that site.
It may not necessarily be worse though, Mark.
Except if, you have to develop within a certain area, right? And so they're stuck with a certain area. By expanding out that area, they could actually have more side, they can have a more slender building, and by giving them some of these variances. So I think you end up getting a less chunky building and maybe something's more beautiful ultimately for for that parcel.
Well, I'll just give my 2 cents. So, there's something that's going to be built in the site. I think that everybody understands that they have as of right. It may not be as of right that was floating around in the emails, but they can build something on this site. They've come to us and they've asked us for height. We were not in support of that. Community was not in support of that. That brings the massing back down to the ground a little bit more, as Asa indicated. It also, brought back to their team, the project team, that they needed to do something that would be a little bit better. So to Mark's point, we do have an opportunity to kind of guide what the outcome, or at least give our 2 cents as what the outcome of the development should look like. I am in support of the setbacks. I think that given the site is where this property is, it actually, the buffer that you have from the roadway already, it's not a convenience road where you pull off to the side and you go and grab a 7-Eleven or something like that. This is a high speed area that's going to have a significant buffer from the roadway to the building. I think the setbacks give them additional placement for the building to make it better. I would have loved to see something more of a contributory feature to the city, like a park or something like that. I think the site is constrained, and I don't know how much I can ask them to do some of those things. They were trying to get that done in the height last time, and it just wasn't something that we really liked. I hate the idea of the building being pushed up against the Talmudic University building. So the setbacks, the additional space allow them to stretch the building and pull it away. And then I just have some trouble with, on the zoning. I do support the zoning, and I'll tell you why. If my understanding of 2014 is correct, and we there was a parcel of land that was appended to this property already, and it was given RM2. I think it would be hard for me to make a case that now you're going to append additional land and under the same, almost similar circumstances, not give the RM2. So that would be my comments to really, share with the city commission. Would it be better that, nothing be built here? Perhaps. I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that there's a private landowner that owns property that's looking to build something. And, I think that we have to be respectful of that and understand that's how this works.
Is it my turn?
Sure, go ahead, Michael.
Okay, thank you. So
Michael, this is your second term, by the way. So go ahead.
Oh no, I just asked questions before. I didn't make a statement. So
go ahead.
So I love the idea of this being permanent green space, but I don't really think that's what's before us. Are we as a community prepared to purchase this property from the applicant? Are we prepared to purchase the FDOT parcel? And that's not really what we're considering here, as much as I think that would be.
We get the FDOT parcel for free.
Okay, well, that doesn't get it done though. There's still a private owner next door who wants to build something, and I think they're going to do that. So I'm glad we had the comments around helping everyone to understand that something's going to happen here, and I believe this is a solid proposal that should be given consideration. As far as the setbacks go, I like what Mark said about chunky. I think it's the setback changes are smart way to go. And I would remind everybody that I think we're between the Alton Road on the west side and the property line is already between 40 and 50 feet. So anything in addition to that, I think what's being proposed in addition to that is another 15 feet or so. That's a significant amount of green space buffer between Alton Road and where a building might ultimately be. It's even more significant on the north side, on the Alton Road side. And so I'm very comfortable, not only comfortable with the setbacks, I think that's the right way to go in this situation. I think that's the appropriate thing to do. And setbacks, are generally work, but sometimes they don't. In this situation, I think we can improve on what the original requirement is there. Regarding, some of the comments that folks made about our original vote, I can tell you that my original vote, I can't speak for the board, my original vote was rooted in the idea that a tall, contemporary glass tower in that location would be fundamentally different from the low profile, single family character around there. So that was, and I really didn't give a lot of thought to the other aspects. I didn't go deep into the other aspects of the proposal because for me, the height made it really a non-starter. So I am open to this idea. I do believe that something will ultimately be done here, and I think this is a solid proposal from this developer. I will also say real quickly that I do think that sometimes something like this can be a spark. Can be the 41st Street Committee's been working for 3 years. Sometimes, I know David's shaking his head. He thinks it's a non-starter, it's not going to happen. Sometimes, this is a residential building. It's not like we're putting a big office tower here. So, sometimes it can be a spark. I was a builder for many years. I've seen it happen over and over again. Somebody willing to make a significant investment, kind of builders. I used to say builders are like lemmings, and so business activity often follows business activity, and this could be something that is helpful. I would encourage the commission and I would encourage the developer to get engaged with this 41st Street Committee and what can be done to help make sure this is a big plus for that corridor, for that 41st Street corridor. And make sure it is a plus. And that's why I asked the questions of Mr. Miguel. I do think So anyway, I'm in favor also of sending it with a positive recommendation to the commission.
Okay, and I don't think we need to per se take a vote unless I'm guided by staff differently. Or Tom, you want to opine?
Well, you're not transmitting it to the commission. The commission basically just asked you for a recommendation on the proposed modifications to the LDR amendment, and whether or not your opinion has changed regarding the rezoning and the land use. If you don't have a new recommendation for the future land use and the rezoning, you certainly don't have to take any action. If you do have a recommendation regarding the changes proposed for the LDRs where the height has been brought back to what it was previously, and the only requests being made are for setbacks and for the liner, you can certainly provide that recommendation if you see fit.
I'm happy to make a motion to send it with a positive recommendation if the board is interested.
Well, let's do this, Michael. Let's just kind of lay them out. So it'll be a positive. You want to lay them out again, Tom? So a positive recommendation.
Yeah, there's 3 items that are pending before the commission. The rezoning and the flume have not changed since you last transmitted them. And so the commission referred them back to you to see if you had a different recommendation based upon the changes to the LDRs. If you don't have any new recommendation for the flume or for the rezoning, you can certainly just indicate that. And then on the LDRs, whether you have a recommendation on the revisions proposed to the LDRs. So you can either make a recommendation on all 3, you can do them separately, or you could just make a recommendation on the LDRs and then not make any changes to your recommendation on the flume and the rezoning.
Michael, do you want to
do whatever we want? We can do whatever we want. Yeah, I'm happy to make
do whatever you want.
make a recommendation, a positive recommendation for all 3 at this point. So I'm happy to move that.
Is there a second to that motion?
Yeah.
I don't know who. Michael, did you catch that?
I think that was Asa. Did you second that?
I seconded it to Mike.
Okay. Okay, so I'll call for the motion. Mr. Vatia?
Yes.
Mr. Weeder?
No.
Mr. Jelpy?
Yes.
Mr. Barano?
Yes.
Mr. Pietro?
Yes.
Mr. Milan?
Yes.
And Mr. Brantley?
Yes.
The motion passes 6-1 on all 3 items.
And then, Michael, if you also transmit, I think, unless the board has, wants to correct me, I think there was considerable concern around traffic impacts, so we would want the motion to go with a suggestion that the city work diligently with the developer if a building is to come to fruition on mitigating traffic impacts in the neighborhood. Please. All right.
Okay.
Is that by acclamation?
Anybody opposed to that?
I'm not opposed to it. I think that needs to be fully vetted, fully explored, fully considered as it moves along.
Okay.
And do you want us to include that in your recommendation to the city commission for second reading of these? Okay.
Yes,
Michael,
please.
did you get the whole recommendation, Belush?
I'm sorry, what'd you say? I'm sorry, I missed that, Tom?
Did you get the whole recommendation that they just...
Yeah, basically the recommendation is to work with city staff as part of the development to mitigate any traffic impacts as a result of the construction.
Okay.
And
that's a separate motion. That was a separate motion that everybody agreed to compared to the first motion, which was to recommend approval of all 3 items, where David Weeder was the one who indicated no for those 3 items.
That's correct. The second one by acclamation. Let's just a statement to the development team. I mean, you've heard a lot of what we said today. You've heard the neighbors, so please work diligently and in good faith and best efforts to do as much mitigation you can on the design team, Ray and Camilo, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will.
I believe Tom and Nick, did you guys want to discuss the potential for the procedures for our in-person meetings?
Yes. Nick, do you want me to go ahead and basically give an explanation of the protocol that we're looking at in the event that the governor doesn't extend the order on October 31st?
Yeah, Tom, I can, if you'd like, I can frame the issue, and then maybe you go through the protocols we've proposed. So, so just very briefly, we are expecting that the governor will not extend Executive Order 20-69 for another month, and this is the order that has permitted the board to hold meetings that are virtual only. With obviously, we've provided an in-person option for members of the public who do not have access to a computer. So, assuming that the order is allowed to expire at the end of this month, a quorum of the board, which is four, will be required to meet in person. The way we're proposing to do this is to continue to broadcast these meetings on all of the city's various media, and then also via Zoom, so that the remaining board members, applicants, staff, members of the public, will continue to participate virtually. The only major change being obviously that the quorum would need to be present in person. Just so that everyone's aware, my office has prepared a resolution on tomorrow night's City Commission agenda, which makes certain legislative findings due to, relating to the public health emergency that the COVID-19 pandemic has given rise to, and adopting a policy for virtual meetings of the City Commission, the city's land use boards, and the city's other boards and committees moving forward. So Tom can get into the more specific issues of what that will actually look like. But just so you all are aware, there is a draft policy going before the City Commission tomorrow, and based on what action the City Commission takes, we may incorporate some amendments in the ordinance that was pending before you today. That ordinance, we requested that the board continue, and the board did continue. Depending on what action the commission takes tomorrow, we may incorporate amendments into that draft. So Tom, if you'd like, why don't you go through the specifics of what the meetings will look like, where they'll take place, and how we'll continue to.
If the governor allows the order to suspend, does that mean that the city can resolve to supersede that order, or will we be in conflict with Tallahassee?
We would not be. So we would not. So what the order suspended specifically was the requirement in any Florida statute that local government bodies meet in person, that a quorum of the local government body meet in person. So if that order is allowed to expire, as we expect it will be at the end of October, then a quorum of the planning board will be required to appear in person to take any official action. And the reason why I'd like, because I understand the board's going to have questions, but I'd like Tom to go through, where the board would meet and what that would look like. Again, as a reminder, it's just a quorum of the board that needs to meet in person. So it's 4 members. The remaining board members would continue to appear virtually.
Will we be able to vote?
Yes.
So has the city attorney applied to the governor for the ability of the meetings to go on the way they are? Because we're in a very dangerous spot right now, and I'm not a youngster, so I fear, I've been isolated in my house since March.
I appreciate that question. I think we all share that sentiment. The commission has on a number of occasions, as a body, urged the governor to extend Executive Order 20-69. I also know that the League of Cities has done the same thing because, you know, just as we're all concerned about the risks associated with in-person gatherings, so too are the boards of every other, of many other governments in Florida. So, but despite all that, we are expecting, and the word on the street is that that the order will not be extended again past October.
Nick, is there a provision, and I think we may have touched on this before, but is there a provision where the meeting could be held, you know, in person, but those who, like a condo board meeting, I mean, state Florida statute allows a condo board members to call in and participate. Some are there, some are not there, but they're still able to, that they're attending if they're calling in. David and or anybody else who had concerns about the virus could participate remotely, while others might feel comfortable to be in person.
That's exactly right, Mike, and that's why, I mean, we've drafted the policy that's going to the commission tomorrow in the narrowest way possible, so that basically, again, the only requirement that the executive orders have suspended is that a quorum be present in person. There's a long line of attorney general opinions predating COVID that due to extraordinary circumstances, illness, medical treatment, hospitalization, or other incapacity, that board members may participate remotely and vote remotely. So,
and what's a quorum of our board? What is it?
4.
4. Okay, so 4 would have to be in person, and then 3.
Well, 5 for CUPs.
5 for CUP in person. Okay. And what about? I mean, you're talking about location. I mean, we have this big convention center. Could we, could we spread out and be 6 feet apart? Wear masks or whatever. Could we?
So that's what I was going to get to.
That's Tom's part. Yes.
Okay.
Basically, what we anticipate, and we had actually made plans for this for the October meetings, but the governor signed the extension at the very last minute, so we didn't have to implement this for our October meetings. But basically, what it will be is, assuming that the governor's order is not extended, then we reserved a room in the convention center that will be for board members only. There'll be staff people there to assist with any technical issues, but my staff, the city attorney, will all be participating via Zoom, and all the applicants will be participating via Zoom. It's only the board members that will be in this convention center room. And we will still have a separate room that members of the public can go utilize like they do now, but that's going to be a room that's separate and apart from you. So they won't come into the same room as you guys. And as long as we have at least a quorum present physically. So for example, for CUP applications, as long as 5 members of the planning board can be within this room in the convention center, and the seating will all be, you'll be physically separated, everybody will be wearing masks. 2 members of the board can participate via Zoom. And this is what we've explained to all the other boards. And some boards, all the members have said, we can be there. Other boards, certain members have asked if they could be the ones that participate remotely. So what we've done essentially is we've left it up to the boards to decide which members will be there physically and which ones would prefer to do it via Zoom. And so
Tom, has there been any consideration of setting up that same? Which members
could be there physically and which ones would absolutely need to participate via Zoom?
Any consideration setting up what you just described, except setting it up in an outdoor setting? Because based on my own personal interpretation of virus risk, being indoors is riskier than being outdoors.
At this point, we don't have the capacity to set up an outdoor venue simply because of recording concerns as well as broadcasting concerns. That's the only way that we can get the recording and the technical aspects to work is indoors.
Okay. All right. Well, that's something to think about. If the virus spikes, if we have a tough winter, if things get worse, You know, some people may not be comfortable going indoors. You know, I've been very sensitive about that myself this year. So,
and one of the reasons we're having this conversation is because we recognize that as appointed members of the board, there may be members of the board for whatever reason that just either don't feel comfortable, don't feel safe, or can't attend a meeting in person. And the reason we want to have these discussions now is because if for whatever reason we can't have a physical quorum, then yeah, we'll have to postpone the meeting like we did in March, like we did in April. And unless the governor extends the order again, we may have to look at, you know, appointing new members. Because if members of the board, they just don't feel safe participating indoors, and we can't get around that legally, you know, we may have to look at postponing meetings until we can either get people who would be willing to attend meetings indoors, or until the governor extends the order again and allows for virtual
I suggest
platforms.
you consider, you know, outdoor locations, you know, even if it is technically less efficient or whatever. Indoors so far, I mean, I've been to the grocery store, but I'm wearing a mask if I'm indoors and I'm around folks who I don't know their status, you know. So that's how I've managed this year personally. So
Tom, I think masks would be required.
Yeah, masks would be required. There would be physical separation. It would be a lot different than a grocery store, because you would not only have physical separation when you're sitting there, but there would be physical separation all the time. It's not like you're going to have people meandering in and out.
How big is the room, and what are the filtration? Are there HEPA filters? You know,
I don't know what the filtration system is. Michael, Nick, do you guys know what that is? They're big rooms. I mean, volumetrically, they're really, really big rooms. These aren't tiny little rooms.
Air conditioning carrying the virus, you know, throughout the room. So that's an issue.
Well, I don't know that, and David asked an important question. I don't know the specifics of the filtration. What I do know is that each board member, and maybe we neglected to mention this before, but each board member would be on their own device, right, Tom, for
Yes,
Zoom purposes.
correct.
So
Yes.
So there's not, there's really no reason for any, and the rooms are large, so there's no reason for any board members to be too close to each other, because in fact, I think for audio purposes, they're going to need to be, you know, rather significantly separated from each other. Because
what's audio
you know,
like speaking through a mask though? I've not tried that.
That works. It works.
It works?
Yeah, I do it all the time on phones.
Okay, all right. Well, then, so you're wearing a mask indoors. You're speaking. Your audio is being recorded through the mask.
And for those of us who talk too long, you know, with stuff cotton in their mouths as well.
So just when you brought up a good point, the technical aspects, there's a lot of feedback if we're all in the same room with our mics picking up. So I know you have an amazing IT department, and I'm sure they're prepared and aware of this, but just so that we're aware, it's been very difficult, even when I do 10, 15 feet apart.
And Daniel, I'm being told that from staff that the board members would be more or less 15 feet apart. And that we can ask staff can ask our facilities team the question about air conditioning and filtration, and we'd be able to get you an answer.
That would be important.
And if
that's being worked out.
And if technical staff wants to tell us what equipment we need to bring, like I'll bring a headphone, like what Mike's got on now, you know, that plugs in and is a mic, and that way we don't have to have our laptops on audio, and we can have it on a headphone setting. Whatever they want to recommend to us individually in advance of the meeting, I would recommend it.
Yes, headsets will be required, so we don't have a feedback issue. But we've tested it, and there have not been feedback issues with as long as everybody's using a headset.
And Nick, what I'm wearing right now considered to be a headset, or are we speaking about like headphones, like Bose noise canceling? Is this considered a headset?
What you're wearing would be fine.
Would be fine, because you're wearing the wireless version of what I'm.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't we do a straw poll?
He's younger than you, Michael.
Oh, he's not worried. I know he's not. He thinks he's.
Oh no,
right?
Everybody, you know what? Listen, everybody has the same concern, and we all recognize that this puts us in a difficult position. However, we feel that that we've drafted a policy, and I can forward that to the board, the draft policy that my office has prepared, which makes legislative findings, as to the reasons why we're doing this, as to the risks associated with in-person gatherings. And also the goal here is to have as absolutely few people in person as is legally required. That's why, that's why we've drafted it, so that other board members can appear virtually, so that staff, applicants, members of the public appear virtually. I mean, the idea here is that there be no more than what's legally required.
Nick,
Mark, I think you had a question.
I would suggest, if I can just.
Can you guys
one second, Michael. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I thought that we did a straw poll already with the members to see who would feel comfortable, who wouldn't feel comfortable, because perhaps, if we commit, like who will show up in person and who doesn't feel comfortable, this may be moot, because maybe perhaps there's enough of us who will be okay doing it in person, and someone like David can stay at home on Zoom and still be the same effect.
Yes, you're correct. You're correct, Mark. We did that. We did
because I'm an old fart. So.
As am I, but I guess I'm more less risky.
So guys, we did do the email poll, so we have the information on that. I just wanted to also suggest that if we're going to have an indoor meeting like that, we speed up the meeting as fast as possible, and move things along. And if there's going to be something that's really a big issue, continue it, to the next month's meeting, so we don't have, the board members spending 6 hours, in a room.
No pontificating.
And by the way, this is what's required for the board to take official action. And when I say official action, I mean to make a recommendation on amendments to the LDRs. Your review of amendments to the LDRs is required. To vote on issues relating to conditional use permits. Again, that's your affirmative vote is required under the city code. But for the planning board, assuming we are under these circumstances for an extended period of time, there are exceptions, and there have been exceptions construed for meetings that are more in the nature of a workshop, of an informal workshop. So if there's a particular policy issue that the planning board in the future wants to take up, where there's no formal vote taken, but rather a discussion on a particular policy matter, those could be conducted virtually only. It's any meeting at which official action must be taken.
Well, that's going to be the bulk of our meetings. So, I think it's just, I'm just not understanding that the state has such an antiquated rule. To Michael's point, what's the difference? We do it here now under the suspension of that rule, and it's just hard to understand it. We're not going to come to that answer today, but it's just I hope that you guys are sending something on behalf of the city saying, hey, this has worked for us really well. We would like, to continue doing it.
Yeah, Kareem, I totally agree with you. I mean, you look at what's happening in the court system right now. What litigators are realizing is that Zoom works far better for instance, just calendar call than in person. It's much more efficient. It takes less time. It's cheaper for the litigants, and the technology exists. Whenever these rules were written, Zoom probably didn't exist, right? So
that doesn't.
You have to sort of jury. There's no difference in the results there of us being together.
That doesn't apply to jury trials, I don't think.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But I'm saying it does you still could take witnesses, remotely. You could still do bench trials. By the way, that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you could take witnesses, you could take depositions. And so, it's just so antiquated that we can't keep doing this if we so choose. And that way, by the way, if you're away, you can still participate.
Yeah, I can't think of a downside if it were extended another 6 months or a year or whatever, just to be absolutely sure, but whatever. We don't have, like Kareem said, we don't have control over that. So
there's a vaccine.
But David, I think it's even more than that. I mean, I think it's, let's say you were traveling for 2 months or 3 months. I go away, right? I actually listen to the meetings when I'm away, right? But I can't participate. It seems awfully silly that I can't participate when the technology exists, that I could just do what I'm doing right now. But because that rule happened that we have to be in person, I just think, again, this is, we don't have any say in this, but certainly.
No, Mark, I share your feeling. I mean, this is the first summer I haven't gone anywhere because I didn't want to fly or drive anywhere, and so usually I'm in Vermont in the summer. But if we could have the meetings like this, there's no necessity for me to miss any meetings.
Right.
I, usually miss the September meeting.
Exactly.
Right. And my point, Nick, is just my feeling is that I want to make sure that the city, you as the attorney to this board, are advocating on this issue to the governor and giving, some language around the desire to have the optionality to make that choice as a city, and to suggest on behalf of the city, or at least this board, that we have been very successful having that optionality, and through a wide range of ages, diversification that participate on this board. So we would, I just want to make sure that you're advocating on behalf of that narrative.
Absolutely. And I can tell you, just in my personal and professional capacity, I mean, we've done everything we can to read the law as broadly as we can moving forward. What I would suggest to the board, which I think might be helpful, is if the board would like to make an official expression of its feeling on this issue, is maybe make a motion recommending that the city commission again urge the governor and perhaps even the legislature to by whatever means, by whatever legal means possible, continue to permit local government bodies to meet virtually. So if somebody would like to make that motion, we can transmit that to the city commission.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
I'm happy.
Anybody opposed?
No, I'm not opposed. Acclamation.
By acclamation.
Acclamation, yeah.
Acclamation.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there anything else, Tom, that you wanted to add?
No. For the November meeting, in the event that the governor does not extend the order, your meeting is on November 17th. And it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, Dave and Mike would prefer to participate via Zoom. And then is everybody else okay being in person, or is there anybody else that would also prefer to participate via Zoom?
Well, I think you already have it on the straw poll. I didn't know if anybody well, you guys can volunteer. Sorry.
Tom, I would be leaning that way. I'm not saying a hard no.
Okay.
If I'm comfortable with the protocols, but I don't see any reason to take risk around this virus. So.
Yeah, I mean, if two people can participate via Zoom, we're encouraging the board members to take advantage of that. So, we have some boards where all 7 members have said we're fine participating, and we said, why don't you just maybe on a rotating basis choose who would do it, just so that you don't have to show up at the convention center unless you really want to.
So it'd still be a Zoom meeting. It's just certain persons would be in the convention center and certain persons would be wherever they happen to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Is the November 17th meeting going to be at the same time, 9 o'clock or?
Yep.
Okay.
9 a.m. Okay.
All right.
Well, we'll keep everybody posted. Hopefully, we'll be surprised and the governor will extend the order. But if not, we'll keep you apprised of. And if we do end up having the in-person meeting, those of you that will be attending in person, we'll probably have you get there maybe a little bit earlier, just so that we can situate everybody correctly and that our
I would like to appear by Zoom if the other board members are okay with that.
Yeah, I think that works.
All right,
Okay,
guys.
that's it.
Thanks so much. Good to see everybody.
Thank you all.
Likewise.
Take care.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you.
2017.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Don't forget to vote.